And we all just can't believe that it's sunrise already, midweek, and we are about wrapping up the month of August. This is the AM show with me, Blessed Suga, and it's such a pleasure to have you here on the Joy News channel, joining us for the show that matters to you. We say that it is worth waking up for, and we are ready to update you on all of the stories that we have coming through already. A number of developments over the last 24 hours, which we will bring to your attention here on the show. We've got sports and, of course, matters relating to business and all that you need to know about the stories featuring in the newspapers this morning, which we will be starting off with and getting some analysis on, and later as we expect Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante, who will be my guest as we look into the papers for today. But you're welcome to the show. Share your thoughts with us, your feedback, and whatever it is that you feel is bothering you. We'll give you the opportunity to share your thoughts with us later on the show at 9:45, where we'll open the phone lines for you to join us and to share your thoughts with us. And don't forget that coming up today as well, we'll be talking about BRICS. We know that informal conversations have started for the country to explore possibilities of the country joining that economic bloc. What are the opportunities for us, and what's likely to happen if Ghana decides to join the alliance? We know that traditional alliance of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, which actually accounts for some 40% of the world population, now says that it is reaching out to accommodate more and more countries, especially those in Africa. We'll talk about that and look at the possible implications for our economy as well. Also on the show, we'll tell you about the Catholic Relief Services and how it's actually helped to maintain peace in Ghana. We know that the group is 65 and is seeking to support and also show up its work here in Ghana and across the world. What's keeping them all these years, and what's the future looking like? We'll have a conversation on that as well, and just give you some sort of a roundtable discussion on taxation in Ghana and how governments can actually maximize our taxes to ensure that the country develops. It's all coming up here on the AM show. You want to be my guest as we kick off the morning. Please stay. Hello there. It's good to have you back with us. In 2018, government started the implementation of the One District, One Warehouse policy to solve the problems of post-harvest losses in Ghana. While some of the warehouses have been operationalized, the warehouse in the Custodian West District of the Upper East region remains closed. Security man of the facility has started rearing poultry there. Features editor Jojo Kobina now reports.
The construction of warehouses under the Infrastructure for Poverty Eradication Program will be a major booster in our efforts to guarantee food security and the transformation of the agricultural sector.
Well, behind me is the One District, One Warehouse in the Custodian area. Brilliant idea for farmers to actually farm, and then when they have excess, they bring it here for storage, and then later it's released onto the market. Brilliant idea. But let's go in and find out what it's serving its purpose.
The government has not put the warehouse to use, so the security man there has started rearing chicken in the warehouse. One District, One Warehouse is a very coherent policy to help farmers store their harvest and reduce post-harvest losses. It complements the Planting for Food and Jobs program. Of course, the people of Custodian West were excited about this project because it would help them store excess rice, which usually sells at 3 bags for the price of 2 in times of bumper harvest.
Bumper harvest this season with no ready market forced the rice farmers earlier this week to sell some of their grains at 3 bags for the price of 2.
I've sold more than about 1,000 bags. The 1,000 bags have gone. I've got only about 100 bags money.
Well, farmers like Isaac Pabia looked forward to the completion and operationalization of the warehouse. Unfortunately, work has stalled for nearly 3 years.
We have farmers who are in the valleys farming rice. Where to store these grains during the harvesting season? We are anticipating it will solve a problem. But as it is right now, it's a standstill and it's not serving any purpose.
Pabia says he has been to the district agricultural office for answers, but was told the project is under the special development initiative.
The last time I followed up with the Department of Agric, they couldn't give me much information about it. The reason being that the project was under the Ministry of Presidential Special Initiative, which is no more. So they find it difficult to access information to share with us. But we've been there to find out what is going on, and the contractor is not on site.
This project is under the Infrastructure for Poverty Eradication Program, IPEP. Unfortunately, the contractor has not been fully paid, so he has not handed over the project for use.
And now the recent hike in fuel prices appears to have moved a number of commercial drivers into finding new ways of dealing with the impacts. The fluctuating prices seem to be taking a toll, a psychological one, on drivers, just as it's reeling in their pockets as well. My colleague Emmanuel Giveno caught up with a 20-year-old taxi driver who has blinded his fuel gauge to avoid the distraction of seeing the fuel gauge going down.
He said when it was low, price says still have to know be must have 80 the drop. I didn't remember and club when they full dropping now.
That is Emmanuel Fachao, a 20-year-old man who has been driving for 2 years. Consistent rise in fuel prices is forcing him to reconsider moving out of the driving business.
My demand for them I got to petrol 2.5. May say 7.5. After the carnival question, you go wash you but it's only to my account and filling station.
The fuel price increases are eating away at his profit. It also affects his concentration on the road too. Emmanuel says constantly witnessing his fuel reduce, as seen from the fuel indicator, distracts him, so he has decided to cover the fuel gauge. To reduce the frequent visits to the filling station, Emmanuel opts for short-distance rides. He believes short-distance rides are more cost-effective than long rides, although he admits the passengers can be irritating. Emmanuel appears not to be the only one covering the fuel gauge whilst on the road. Some commercial drivers also cover the fuel gauge. But what is the point when the fuel will decrease due to the kilometers covered? Emmanuel explains that he parks his vehicle after a number of rides to check his gauge to avoid completely running out of fuel.
So we're blocking this here. This is commerce and over to me there. Hey, you also petrol and me feel go back say me feel it. Who feel it? I feel it 2 million, 2.5, 3 million.
In December 2021, when he started driving, petrol was selling at 6 cedis 80 pesos per litre. Now, petrol is selling at 13 cedis 50 pesos per litre. This represents a 99% increase in price. Should the fuel prices continue to escalate, Emmanuel fears he'll be squeezed out of business. For now, the 20-year-old is looking at saving enough to start his own business and get off the road. Until then, he'll continue to temporarily cover his fuel gauge to give him some sanity on the road. Emmanuel Jivenu, Joy Prime.
And our retired Supreme Court Judge Justice S.K. Dateba is making a strong case for policymakers in the data protection space to deepen collaboration to safeguard the online children online across the country. According to him, such collaborations will also ensure that children optimize the usage of the internet platforms while being protected. He was speaking at the launch of the Africa Digital Rights Hub, and there's more in this report for you.
The study demonstrates the importance of ensuring digital privacy of children in Ghana. As children are increasingly exploring the digital space, stakeholders in the space believe that a lot needs to be done to protect them. Speaking at the launch of the Youth People Privacy and Trust here in Accra, a retired Supreme Court Judge, Professor S.K. Dateba, called on stakeholders within the digital space to adopt a collaborative approach to ensure the protection of children.
The internet does not forgive and does not forget. So if you get your data onto the internet, that is it. It is there. And we don't want our young people to put inappropriate data about themselves onto the internet. Also, at the other end of it, inappropriate content should not be distributed to our young people.
On her part, the Executive Director of Africa Digital Rights and Hub, Teki Akwete, also assured of constant research to safeguard children's privacy.
We undertook this exercise through a series of workshops that we had with young children from different economic backgrounds in Accra, and then also worked with the school to undertake an online survey where we asked children, over 100 children, questions around what they think about their privacy online. And so this report essentially captures what the young children said about their privacy. It also captures some recommendations that they made around how their privacy should be protected.
Policymakers and decision makers have also been urged to find solutions to the concerns of young people about their online privacy in schools. An assurance of this, according to them, will generate more trust among young people.
This is a very important issue that young people face, especially since we are exposed to technology at a very young age. It has let me know that we are, as children, we are ahead, and because we grew up knowing that we are not supposed to be the ones to talk about matters that concern us. But this program has helped me know that we do matter, and issues such as this, relevant issues such as this, cyberbullying and others, and illegal use of our data should be addressed.
Karen Obain's report read to you.
And now we take you up north because the Wild West District Chief Executive Vida Dorothy has expressed worry over the cases of child marriage in the Wild West District. As a measure to curb the incident, the Assembly has enacted laws which she says is punitive enough to deter people from engaging in the act. Vida Dorothy made the disclosure at the inauguration of Child Parliament for the district, which is organized by the non-governmental organization World Vision Ghana.
One major issue, which is a serious challenge to the development of the Wild West District, is child marriage. Though the Wild West District Assembly, traditional authorities in the district have put on stringent measures aimed at curbing it, the practice is still done on the blind side. Vida Dorothy is the Wild West District Chief Executive.
Where it is actually true that child marriage is being practiced in some of our communities, and that goes a long way to affect our children's education in the district. So I'm very worried about it. And as a district assembly, we have put plans in place to reduce or minimize these manners.
Vida Dorothy is however hopeful that the latest bylaws by the Assembly are punitive enough to deter persons who want to engage in the act.
Some of the punishment is that if it is a schoolboy that has impregnated a colleague girl, then both of them are, when the girl is pregnant, now we found against abortion. So when the girl is pregnant, we allow that girl to stay in school till she delivers. And when the child is weaned, then the girl goes back to school. The period that the girl will be away from school, the boy will also have to stay away from school, so that it will be a fair punishment for both of them. If it is a community member who is not a schoolboy, then that person will be asked to pay some fine and be remitting to the girl until she gives birth. Of course, the girl should not be taken as a wife to that man.
Furthermore, Rice and child-centered non-governmental organization World Vision Ghana has joined the wagon with the implementation of several child-centered programs in the district, including the establishment of a child parliament. Child Protection and Advocacy Manager of World Vision Ghana, Gabon Coup, says the aim is to raise awareness of the challenges that children in the district are being confronted with.
Beyond protection, we are looking at how are children involved when it comes to decision making, when it comes to discussing issues concerning them. So then we nurtured the idea to come out with the concept of child parliament, because we want to look at children contributing to decisions not only at the household level, but also looking at issues around policy that affects their lives. So today we are here in Wa West, specifically in Wechako, where we have just inaugurated the district child parliament.
First issue dealt with by the child parliament on their first session was on child marriages, where the House agreed to collaborate with state institutions and development partners to undertake community level education on causes and effect of child marriages.
Mr. Speaker, let me assure you that we on the minority side of this House are ready to debate on this issue and take decision to address these child protection issues in our communities.
Mr. Speaker, the high incidence of child marriage in our communities is as the result of the following: 1. Non-enforcement of law. 2. Parental neglect. 3. Poor functioning of state institutions.
So, Mr. Speaker, let me suggest that poverty alleviation program of the district assembly and other social programs of government like LIPS should make more available to such parents to enable them to take care of their children, especially Apobi people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gabon Coup was excited about their performance and spoke of Vision Ghana's future plans.
With the children, we are looking at empowering these children beyond Huawei's. Okay, we want to see these children in the next National Child Parliament. I coordinate that as well. And I have children who are even traveling to the US. Some are going to Kenya for the Pan-African Child Parliament. In the near future, I want to see these children also in those spaces. I want to see them responding and participating in national discourse.
World Vision Ghana also used the opportunity to donate 50 bicycles, 300 school uniforms, 300 socks and sandals to the Wawas District Assembly for onward delivery to some deprived schools in the district. Sergio Birfori is the Wawas Area Programs Manager of World Vision Ghana.
As we walk through communities, monitoring children, interacting with community members, we notice some children who commuted very long distances from their homes to school on a daily basis. As a result of this, we're able to acquire 50 bicycles that will support 50 children in 3 communities. The second set of presentation is school uniforms. We have 300 pieces of school uniforms, 300 pieces of socks, 300 pieces of footwear, sandals, 300 school bags, and 300 belts. These put together is going to support a deprived community where in our visit to the school, we found many of the children were not really very presentable in school. In fact, some of them were in their birthday uniforms.
Reporting for Joy News, Rafik Salam. Watch out.
And now back in studio, we talk politics because pressure is mounting on the top leadership of the new Patriotic Party to take action against the North-East Regional Chairperson of the party, Nuruddin Hussaini. He's been accused of masterminding the brutal attack on an agent of presidential aspirant Alan Kojo-Chermating, who has been airlifted to Accra for special treatment. The aggrieved aspirants say an attack on one agent is an attack on all. They are therefore demanding sanctions against the culprits and investigations into the other excesses. From the elections, Samuel Mbura reports.
We already know there were concerns of alleged brutality against some agents and vote buying by some of the aspirants during the conduct of the Superdelegates Congress. But the issue that dominated in the meeting between the aspirants and the elections committee was the attack on the agents of Alan Chermating in the Northeast region. Who speaks for his campaign team, said they have presented the evidence to the committee and are expecting the committee to expedite actions against the culprits.
We hope that the committee, after receiving these reports, will not just keep them as reports, but especially the party executives, particularly regional executives, who are found to have been culpable, will receive the necessary disciplinary action to send the right signal. Because this is not the end. We are now facing the November 4th vote election, which involves over 200,000 delegates, in which case you are going to have more than 1,000, in some cases, 1,500 voters at one voting center.
Kojo Poku also indicated that evidence on the attacks have been presented to the elections committee for further actions.
A lot of people are not happy with the Northeast issue. I think the Nalerugu issue is the only region that something did not go well. And I think there's going to be further investigation to basically ascertain. And there are other regions that some of the aspirants also have problems. But for all of us, I think the general consensus is that Northeast is where the problem is, and we need to resolve that.
But what was your concern? You also contested the...
Yes, but I also had a concern with Northeast, which, like I said, we all seem to think that Northeast is an issue. And I think that the election committee is dealing with that.
Okay, there was Kennedy Japan, who was captured in the viral video expressing his anger about the maltreatment of his team at different locations, came with his agents that were reportedly attacked and intimidated as proof of evidence. One of them was even in a neck brace. Meanwhile, the elections committee of the NPP said they will take the appropriate actions if the facts are established. Alexander Afeyamakins speaks for the committee.
I must say that we had a fruitful engagement, very fruitful. Again, some agents also came out with their reports on certain happenings, isolated cases where they had some difficulties. We heard them. They had an opportunity to give us a full report of what happened. We are going to meet some other members again on Thursday. We also had an opportunity to meet with one of the aspirants who made certain statements, whose statement went viral, and had a positive engagement with him. And I must say that so far, so good. We should be meeting again on Thursday, and once we are done on Thursday, the committee will come out and make known to you its conclusions. But so far, so good, all is well.
One more outstanding issue still before the NPP is the disciplinary actions against 4 members for alleged misconduct. The committee resumes on Thursday to continue the meeting. For Joy News, Samuel Mbura, Asylum Down.
We'll definitely be back with some updates from the NPP headquarters. Now the Yinama community of the within the Kintampo South districts of the Bono East region. We take you there where there's currently a feud between the Nananum and the district assembly over who has the right to run the community's water system. This comes after the chiefs of the area awarded the community's water system to contract 2 years after its breakdown, a situation the district chief executives described as unlawful. Chief of the area has been indicating that the community is solely responsible for the running of the water system.
Rural water coverage in Ghana is on the increase, yet there are real concerns about the level of service received and the sustainability of water supply systems. One of the reasons is the lack of systematic maintenance because of inadequate funding and unreliable cash flow for capital maintenance expenditure. Here in Ayima, a predominantly farming community here in the Kintampo South district of the Bono East region, the community's only reliable water system has been out of service for the past 2 years. Some members of the community share with us the challenges they go through as they walk several miles to fetch water from the Yuko River.
We used to fetch
water from the Yuko River and we were fortunate to have a water system. We've been using the water all this while, but unfortunately the pump had the water used to flow until recently, so we struggle when it comes to access to water. We don't get water now, so we trek to the Yoko River. So if you help us, we'll be grateful. Ajawusu is also a resident here. He says the situation has affected the lives of the people, including school-going children who spend hours before fetching water home on daily basis. The distance between here and the water source is far, and the children have to fetch before going to school. So they get to school late. They also fall ill by drinking from the river source because people wash it and animals also drink from it. So we fall ill from drinking from this water source. More than 2 years after the breakdown of the community's water system due to the unavailability of funds to replace a damaged pump, the community has finally resolved to award the Anyima water system to a contractor to run it on a partnership basis. Nana Obrimpon Amia Amponsem is the chief of Anyima.
2 years in Anyima Yenyansu and Anyima Hada. We've been without
drinking water for the past 2 years, so I discussed it with the committee and gave it out to a contractor. The problem we had goes beyond the problems, even with the pipes, the contractor worked with all the pipes. This decision has currently brought about misunderstanding between the Nananum of the community and the district assembly over who has the right to hand the water system to contract, with Nananum stating that the community water system is solely expected to be run by the community.
The TN say Yura Alesjan MP Abase Insuno Ompene Ma contractor no Enyinsuno. Na ono
we were told Alex Jan said he won't allow the contractor to work on the water system because I don't have the right to do so. This document here is the rules governing how the water system needs to be run. It states clearly that the community should take care of the water system and that we should use the money raised from it to repair it when it gets faulty. It stated nowhere that the MP or the assembly has a share or they have to take charge of it. It's all documented here. The banter between Nananum and the Kintampo South District Assembly may continue for some time, even though the contractor has been able to fix the damaged pump. The return to life of the water system is the utmost priority for the people of the community. Anna Sabit, Joy News, Anyima.
And back here in the studio, it's time now for us to check out what's making rounds on the various dailies for today. We get into the newspapers after this. And good to see you on the side of the show. And we are about getting into the newspapers for the morning. And there you have it, the Republic press already coming out to it. A story on phase 2 of the Planting for Food and Jobs campaign, where they're talking about the new policy measures that will be going into that new phase of the PFJ2. And that's got to do with the issues relating to the Planting for Food and Jobs campaign, indicating that Brian Achampong is already sowing seeds of agricultural revitalization. It's the biggest story on the front page of the Republic Press this morning. And Justin Kodia-Frimpong, who's the General Secretary of the New Patriotic Party, is also featuring there. NPP's Justin Kodia-Frimpong talks tough, vows to crack the whip on airing members, and we recall speaking to JFK a couple of days ago when he came into our studios here. And we have Napo cleared as Ministry debunks ASAP and Imani's claims on gas sale agreement. There's also the story about UG students' special needs demand removal of scholarship secretariat registrar. That's also another story featuring on the Republic Press for today. Leak tape, I was told Dampari is an NDC man and would make NPP lose the general elections in 2024. Bugri Nabu being quoted on that page there. We're being joined this morning now by Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante, who's a political scientist and also director for the Center of European Studies at the University of Ghana. Doc, it's such a pleasure to be having you here on the show. In fact, I'll be coming to you shortly to take your thoughts on some of the stories making the rounds. Let me just take a few more of them. The Daily Guide newspaper is also here this morning talking about the plans or plots, if you may want to call it that way, of removing the IGP. There's an update on that. IGP leaked tape saga. MPs grill COP Mensa tomorrow. And it comes to the picture of COP George Alex Mensa, who's in hot waters for allegedly plotting to remove the IGP. The Speaker has set up a special committee looking into the case. Bugri Nabu was the one first individual to appear because he was the one who was heard in that tape being reported to allegedly about a plot to remove the IGP. We'll see how all of that will unfold. 13 arrested over gunshots at Tamale Court. We're also paying close attention to that story for you. And Kennedy Kojo-Poku storm NPP office. It's all part of that meeting which transpired yesterday. And Samuel Mbura will keep watching the updates from our political desk and bring you some updates on what the decision will be on members of the party who are accused of engaging in anti-party conduct. Man killed at Galamsey site, a story on page 6 of the Daily Guide newspaper. And the National Democratic Congress is back in the news again. They're fighting the EC over the limited registration exercise. The NDC believes that this exercise should not just be restricted to district offices, and there are plans to already take on the EC when it comes to legal matters. So we'll explore that shortly. Allow Adainimo Ejako to contest. That's one of the stories featuring on the Ghanaian Publisher for today. They seem to also come with a big story about how President Akufo-Addo is expected to commission one of the biggest salt mines in the country today. And it comes to the story that's featuring on page 2 of the Ghanaian Publisher. President commissions Electrochem salt mine today, and it comes to the picture of Daniel Macaulay, who is the CEO of the Maritime Group, and President Akufo-Addo, who we understand will be part of that ceremony today. The claims are that this Electrochem salt mine is one of the biggest in Africa. We'll get to look at it more in detail as the Ghanaian Publisher appears to be suggesting. There's also a story about Dr. Yaos Iddrisu appealing to teachers to support reforms. Detail of that story, page 3 of the Ghanaian Publisher. The NDC is also featuring here. The NDC is planning to sue the Electoral Commission over the limited voters registration exercises ahead of the district level elections. The NDC raising concerns about how the EC is simply planning to run the exercise in district offices across the country. We'll get into that. The Finder newspaper is also here this morning. Integrated Maritime strategy launched, and it was as part of the conference which was held here in Accra to safeguard territorial waters from criminals. The president has been speaking there as well, so it comes with a picture of the president and some other officials from the Defense Ministry and the Ghana Armed Forces. The Youth Employment Agency is beginning disbursement of funds to some 2,540 beneficiaries today as part of their youth program. First Lady launches unifying campaign to promote gender equality. And we also have a story from the Ministry of Education, train students to be creators, not just repairers of machines. And that's coming from the Sector Minister, Dr. Yao Osei Iddrisu. Okay, why don't we take a look at the Custodian this morning? The Custodian this morning is talking about the story that we brought to you earlier from the Ghanaian publisher, also talking about President Akufo-Addo expected at the ceremony that will officially open Africa's biggest salt mine and processing plant today. It comes also here with a picture of Mr. Daniel Macaulay, who's the chairman of the Magdan Group, and President Akufo-Addo, who we understand will be attending this event. And Planting for Food and Jobs Phase 2, government to provide ready markets for farmers. It's part of the stories that we see coming up here. And NHIS to receive $27.7 million from the World Bank Group is also one of the stories, very top stories on the Custodian today. It's good cash, I guess, for the National Health Insurance Scheme. So that's it for the Custodian newspaper this morning. Let's just do two more and I'll come to you, Dr. Asah-Asante. The new Crusading Guide is also here. Baumia will win by landslide victory. That's coming from Baba Awal. And it comes with a tag of round 2 of NPP conferences, where over 200,000 delegates, we understand, will be deciding the future of the party. YEA begins disbursement of funds to the garment and textiles companies, and as part of their program that they're running. Goldfields lands Gensa Energy deal for... Goldfields is actually lauding the Gensa Energy deal, and the claim is that it's providing mines with sustainable power. President Akufo-Addo is expected in Adan today to commission the biggest salt project ever in the country, and it's just in line with the stories we've been bringing to you in the Custodian, the story in the Republic, the publisher today, which talks about the president attending that event, which will commission Magdan's salt mine in Adan. Angel Group goes global, ready to establish a distilling plant also in the United States of America. And there are more stories that we have for you, also featuring on the Republic Press today. All you need to know is, all you need to have is land, and that's got to do with Phase 2 of the Planting for Food and Jobs campaign, with the Republic Press indicating that Brian Achampon is sowing seeds of agricultural revitalization. Okay, now let me bring in Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante, who's Director of Center of European Studies at the University of Ghana. Doc, you're up this early, so yes, it's in order to say good morning, but the morning is not really good, looking at some of the developments we are already hearing of. Another coup d'etat on the African continent. Gabon is the latest to join the fray. Your outlook?
Very, very sad. Good morning, Lazard, and good morning to your viewers. I am not happy, and I think that is the view of everybody who mean well for democracy in Africa. We have struggled and come this far, so one would have expected that we'll sustain this process and then get to its logical, conclusion and get all the necessary benefits. But it seems to me that people have a different agenda. But we all must rise up and fight this canker. I can say without fear of contradiction that, yes, I admit there are problems with democracy, but it's the best form of government compared to military rule. I am not old, but at least I have seen 2 military coups in Ghana and the effect. And then I have also read extensively on military and politics, and all point to the fact that they bring nothing to the table. So it's unfortunate, but I believe that ECOWAS and AU, all of them will sit up and make sure that we get these miscreants out of our system. But that means that we should govern well. That means that we should respect people's will. That means that we should do away with all the things that will revert the clock of democracy backwards. And that is the way to go.
The numbers are becoming just too many for us, isn't it? Looking at the fact that
yes.
we've not finished dealing with Niger, then you have Gabon coming in the picture.
Yes, it's becoming one too many, and as if we are in the 70s and 90s. And then I see we are in the Latin America in the 80s and 90s, where military coup, you get up in the morning, the only announcement is military coup. It's not the best. And there are a whole lot of soldiers who come and then justify their actions. But I tell you, they don't amount to anything. It's just to what? Deceive you into believing that they have what it takes to govern. They don't have. And it's not me who is saying that. Scholars, soldiers themselves. If you read General Ukraine's book, he talks about the fact that soldiers are not trained how to, govern a civilian society. And if they want to do, they need to shed off their uniform and come and learn the rubrics of governing a civilian society. It's unfortunate, but some of these things can be attributed to the hypocrisy on the part of, African leaders, some African leaders, who always want to, govern in such a way that
I was just about going there, and we just need to point out that the latest pictures you're seeing on the screens now, events of last night, when that announcement was made by the military junta in Gabon. Obviously, this will mean an end to that era of the Bongos, Omar Bongo. Then you have Ali Bongo taking over his father. I mean, the issue about African leaders and why they seem to have a firm grip on power, it's part of the problem, isn't it?
Oh, yes. That has given rise to the current phenomenon we call the third-term agenda, where they want to rule forever. So because of that, they tinker with the constitution, change it to extend their tenure. And that is another form of a coup. I call it what? A constitutional coup. That they use the constitution, they use parliament to extend their tenure. And that creates the problem so that soldiers come and boot them out. But that is not to say that we want to glorify military rule. No, soldiers have never served government any better at all. Examples are there for all of us to see throughout Africa since 1960s, when most African countries got independent, and later they began to have military rule in the 1970s and 1980s and 1990s. We struggled this far. So the reverse that we are seeing, what we call in political science, democratic reversals, to fight against it head on.
That fear is very apparent. The fact that even relatively stable democracies would have to safeguard what they have. If you take a listen to some of the reasons being given by this latest military team taking over power in Gabon, they seem to be talking about, how the electoral processes were handled. And the fear is that relatively stable democracies such as Ghana should be learning from this, making sure that they have everyone on board pre, during, and post the elections.
Normally, soldiers will come with all manner of justification, but for me, it's nothing I do about nothing. There is nothing in there. They come out with all manner of theories. One of the theory is that they have what they call a civilian regime performance. That when civilian regime is performing and you have problems that you have, such as the one you have mentioned, soldiers are the institutions that have the wherewithal to come and nip it in the bud. So because of that, they jump into the fray and then capture power and all that. You realize that this is just a justification, because when they come, their actions and activities point to the fact that they have nothing, they are clueless about how to govern a civilian society. And at the end of the day, they end up, aggravating the already worse situation that we have.
Okay, let's come back home now, but it's still related to democracy, isn't it? The National Democratic Congress, the largest opposition, raising concerns still with the election management body, EC, over the limited registration exercise. The EC will now be doing that continuous process ahead of that's the local level or local assembly elections. The NDC's problem is that the EC is simply restricting the registration to district officers. People might get disenfranchised. Do you agree?
I missed the tail end of your...
Yes, the fear that some people may not get the opportunity to vote, basically.
Yes, I'll come there. But before I do, there's something that I want to share my thoughts on briefly. Then I come there. There is a phenomenon that I have watched with pain. And I believe that all of us must rise up against it. Mm-hmm. And what is this phenomenon? The phenomenon that anytime we go to vote, whether at the national level or at the intra-party level, we tend to leave a problem for the society to handle. Let us cast our mind back to 1990s, where we started the Fourth Republic. You remember that the problem that we had with ballot box snatching. We had syndicates who would go around snatching ballot box and the rest of them. That was the problem. The state was able to handle it. And then we got to another level where the politicians introduced macho men, well-built young men to come and disrupt electoral processes. Then we graduated from there and moved into another era where we had vigilantes, party soldiers, if you like, who come around and cause problem during elections and all that. Then we move the process further to another level where we go to the polls and we shoot people. You saw the last election, 8 people died. Up to date, we have not brought those people to book. Then now we are in another, activity where we cast our ballots. Instead of it being secret, we take our cameras, take pictures, and send to our friends, or we show them openly to the public. It started off in Parliament. It gained currency in NDC elections, and it is in NPP today as they are just recent delegate conference that was organized, which people witnessed this. It's a worrying situation for me. One, because it tells us that anytime we go for election, there is something that politicians introduce into the system that create problems for us.
But I'm not sure I'm not sure that in this case that will be the case for the NDC, because they are simply raising concerns about going ahead with a limited registration exercise when the CI has not been passed in Parliament.
No, I'll come there.
I get the point now. Yeah, yes. I get the point now.
It is not. But this phenomenon is a very dangerous one. And I believe that we must, nip it in the bud. My fear is that if this thing continues, who knows? People can take it to the national level. Where they vote, they show it to people and all that. What are we going to experience 2024?
Yeah.
I think your guess is as good as mine. Let's look at the NDC thing that they are fighting the EC. I think it's a just call. Just one registration, they want to limit it to only the district offices. Expand it. Create that enabling environment for everybody to be able to register and exercise his franchise. Is it too difficult for Electoral Commission to take this? I don't get it. Because this is a beautiful suggestion. It doesn't hurt anybody. Unless, of course, EC want to tell me that it hurts. But I know it doesn't hurt anybody. Expand it, because there are people in faraway rural areas who stay a long distance from districts. So you want them to take car or walk long distances to come to the office. Why don't you create offices so close to them so that they can go and register? And then when the time comes, they can come and exercise their franchise. That is one way by which you will make sure that you expand the franchise to everybody. But once you restrict it, I'm afraid you are not creating what?
Documenting aside the issues of franchise, there are concerns that the political parties may even be taking advantage of this, in terms of voter influence, and possibly using transport systems, the stipends they may be giving out to these persons to move to the district offices as a means of just, influencing voters unduly. The EC should be looking at that.
Yeah. That issue, I agree with you. That issue is also of a concern to me. They will just dole out money to people in the name of, we just give them little transport. But you realize that it's hypocrisy at the highest order. When the people, before coming to that program, they were living in poverty, they are in very vulnerable position. Did you sponsor any of the activities? And then when it's getting to elections, said, I have supported you with transport. Why are they, such people, why are they worrying themselves? Or why are they crying that people give more money? You want to spend 200 Ghana for transport for somebody, and then somebody is capable of giving 5,000. You are worried. That attitude must be stopped, because I don't see the point that you are saying that you are sponsoring somebody transport to come and listen to you and all that. In the traditional areas, when we are going to listen to a chief,
Dr. Asante?
Money will come back to our homes.
Yeah.
That is the spirit of democracy. So I believe that this thing must cease, so that the people will use their own minds and make decisions for themselves, and then vote the way they want to vote.
But correct me if I'm wrong, the notion itself about the relations between the Electoral Commission and the largest opposition party doesn't seem to be too good going into a major election next year. We can't blame the EC, we can't blame the NDC right now, because everyone is just confused about what's happening. How can we get the two along? It doesn't seem that they're on the same page almost all the time.
You remember the last election, the EC came out with a body, eminent personalities who, they put that team together. You remember that team? Is it still in existence? This is the work of that team, that eminent group of people who should call these people, talk to them, all the parties, so that they see the relevance of coming back to the table and discuss issues of elections generally. That is the way to go. Otherwise, it's going to be that banter, and I'm not sure the results is going to be good for all of us.
Okay. The New Patriotic Party wrapping up, the engagements with their presidential aspirants yesterday, and persons who are being accused of engaging in anti-party conduct. I recall talking to Justin Kodia Frimpong. He's featuring on the Republic Press today. NPP's Justin Kodia Frimpong talks tough, vows to crack the whip on erring members. And I recall JFK telling me that the party's constitution should be supreme, and that the party intends to crack down on any individual engaging in anti-party conduct. Just last night, or just yesterday, Alan Kujitramatik, for the very first time, we're seeing that outburst from him. We've not seen him in that state before. The fact that he's talking tough, going ahead to say he will not tolerate indiscipline any longer in the NPP. What does this speak of, the reorganization process of the governing party, and what are the likely implications going into November 4?
What it tells me, what has happened, what it tells me is that, look, institutions are broken down within the MP. When I say institutions, I'm talking about rules, regulations, procedures, and all that. This thing started off very long time, but the party did not put their foot down. They set the rules that don't do this. People were doing something different. No punishment was meted out to them. So it emboldened people. And then at this level, you see all manner of behaviors that are on the scene. And now you want to correct. It's gradually becoming too late. I believe that, yes, if they want to stem the tide, they need to enforce the rules. but would they be able to have the courage, the political will to deal with those who have crossed the line? Because yesterday I listened with rapt attention some of the reports that they sent to them, that there are people who breach the laws with impunity. They voted and showed their ballot to the people. What are you going to do about that? If they want to handle this, and they will handle it very well, they are going to have their family together. But if they want to make it discriminatory, people will rise up and challenge that situation. And the consequence will undermine the fortunes of the November 4th election. I think they must be very, very worried about this situation and make sure that whoever has gone against the rules of the game is giving the necessary sanctions so that they don't encourage impunity.
Let's see if that will happen. Concerns even about, the tie coming up ahead this weekend. One of the presidential aspirants, Kwabena Agyapong, speaking to the Ghanaian publisher and pointing out that the former energy minister, Boakye Agyarko, together with Adainimo, must be allowed to contest. No one should be, talked out of the idea of continuing just to go ahead with the special delegates conference number 2 or phase 2. That's going to be a very expensive exercise for the NPP, going into another special delegates conference, even before the November 4 election. Should, one of the candidates just pull out, give way to another, so we have a complete set of 5 who will now go for the ultimate elections in November?
Blessed, democracy is expensive, but it's a lesser cost than military rule. So we are prepared to pay for this. All right. When the framers of the NPP constitution did their work, they could not anticipate this. It's normal. It's not a fault on their part. It happens. But I'm sure that they've taken political notice of this. They will correct the anomaly. But there is a conversation or a discussion that is in the air, which people have very little or no knowledge about, that they believe that this superdelegate conference body must be scrapped. I disagree. I disagree in the sense that if you listen to Hamilton, he said when any electoral process is handled by those who know how to access those who are going to vote for, the selection becomes the best. And I am fortified by this statement that if you leave out the whole electoral process to be done by any other member within the party, you will not be able to examine, interrogate, and then decide who should be the best one.
Yeah, but how about the aspect? But how about the aspect of democracy being for the people and by the people? You shortlist 5 out of 10. You limit the scope for delegates, grassroots of the party, who pay their dues, who expect that they'll be giving a fair opportunity at choosing out of 100, out of 1,000. I'm not expecting that will happen in the NPP someday, but just give them the opportunity to decide.
Yeah, Blessed, if what you are saying is anything to go by, that logic, if you should extend it, then we want to say that Ghana, with 31 million, you should have about 20 million MPs. There are only 275. This is what we call representative democracy. There are people you put in place to represent you. So it's a fraction of that population. All right. So that number which went and cast their vote the last time was indeed a fraction, which is representative of all those who are important within the NPP. That layer is very good. Now you come to another big one, which is 220,000 people.
Yeah.
That for me, it is the biggest, and it's very good in a sense that after these people have severed, all right, now you extend the frontiers to include more people who may not have direct contact with these people to be able to examine them very well. Now you give them an opportunity to also come and express their views, and that is a beautiful system. I wish they don't jettison the super delegate one. It's a beautiful thing, and it will allow people opportunity to examine those people critically before passing them on to the larger public.
Okay, round 2.
Coming to Boakye Agyarko and Adainimo, I don't think that they should talk somebody out of this process. They should allow them to slug it out, and then we see the winner, because that is the rule of the game. In elections, you do nothing but what? Abide by the rules of the game, because democracy, take it or leave it, is anchored on rule of law. And that once you set the ground rules, you are prepared to go the full hog. So yes, it is a pain, but they should know that this is what? A better pain than the pain that soldiers will inflict on people. I support this.
Okay.
Go all out.
Doc, grateful for your time this morning. Baba Awal is putting his bet on Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. I wonder if you're doing same for him when it comes to the November 4 elections.
Yeah, Baba has made his view, but I tell you, it's the next level. There are a lot of factors that are going to change the dynamics. One, they are going to elect somebody who will not be just a material for MPP, but for the whole nation at large. And that brings to the fore some of the canons we use to measure the choices of voters. One is the economy. Whoever has managed the economy or mismanaged the economy, that conversation will come up strongly. Two, we'll talk about corruption. Who has the political will to deal with corruption will also come out strongly. They will also look at what? Popularity of that person, all right? They will also look at what? The demographics will come and change the situation. Now you are going to have what? More youth in this group whose dreams and desires are different from the rest of what? The other superdelegate members. So issue of unemployment will come up tops. Who can handle this? This regime, has it been able to deliver? Who and who were in the forefront of the affairs of the state? Were they able to deliver so that we can also extend their mandate? These are some of the things that will come up. And then issue of loyalty. Do you have somebody that we can trust, that we can bang our hopes in? And of course, if you look at this government, the government has put all its hope, especially the president, on people who are loyal to him.
Okay.
And that has been sacrificed at the altar of what? Competence. So we need somebody who is competent to lead the party and lead it to what? The promised land. And the last one, they need somebody who has the political will to put his foot down, irrespective of the pressure and all that will come to him. So all these things will change the dynamics. It's not a simple task. So whoever thinks that he has led, or he's in a better position, or he's in a winning situation, must take note that things can change.
A very tall order for the NPP to deal with. But Dr. Kwame Asante, thank you for joining us this morning to look at the newspapers. He's the director of the Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana. Dr. Asante, thank you once more. Next is sports. It's coming up shortly.
Let's do sports now on the AM show with me, Muftau Nabila Abdullah. And later today, an Accra High Court would hear the injunction application that was filed by Kim Faisal against the Ghana Football Association, impending is football elections that will be happening on September 27. Kim Faisal and an application that was sent to the Accra High Court through his lawyer, Question said that the processes leading up to the Ghana Football Association presidential and executive council elections are flawed. Hence, they want the Ghana Football Association to go through the right procedure for the elections. According to them, never in the history of Ghana football election has there been the election of a president and his executive council members before that of the regional football associations, as well as that of the district level elections. Hence, they want the Accra High Court to order the Ghana Football Association to retrace their steps and go through the right channels for the elections to happen. Also, the Ghana Football Association has put on hold all the processes or its timetable leading up to the elections and has communicated to all members, especially those who have filed nominations for various positions within the Ghana Football Association, asking them to stay calm as they will go through all the legal processes to ensure that the right things are done in relation to the governance of football in the country. Meanwhile, a board member of Accra House of Oak, Dr. Nyahonyaho Tamaklo, says King Faisal should take the matter out of court and go through the right channels within the Ghana Football Association to have their issues resolved.
No, but a lot depends on what really has happened. If I got what you said clearly, was King Faisal present when all these procedures took place?
Well, is the elections committee that with their roadmap?
Their roadmap, and they were present.
Yeah, because they were, I'm aware there were pre-discussions.
Exactly. So if they were present, why on earth will he come out now and talk about it? And also, as you put it right, the FA has its own, what do you call it, a structure, where you have a committee that looks into such things. Yeah. So I would suggest he goes there first. Has he been there at all? Has he been there, or you are not aware?
Well, one of the things that I'm not aware is whether King Faisal decided to go to the GFA committees to.
I think he must go there first. He must go to the GFA.
In fact, the matter is already in court. It will be heard on Wednesday. It's already in court. So the GFA has actually put on hold the processes to their elections.
And what you are saying now is news to me, but I think that will be very unfortunate. That is going really to affect the individual clubs. Because if you have boys now, you have to feed them, you have to pay them, and all sorts of things. And if King Faisal will go that way, I will be very much surprised.
They have gone that way. In fact, Ashanti have gone that way.
They couldn't qualify. Were they able to qualify?
They got relegated, actually. They got relegated from the league.
You see, well, I know Alaji very well. But if you have been relegated, even such a case cannot qualify you to be in the Premier League at all.
Yeah, so the fight right now is not to be in the Premier League.
Unless he wants to destroy the whole football process.
Yeah, it's the election process that he's fighting. Exactly. The election process is flawed. So.
And that one, that would be unfair. I think I'll call him and tell him he should try and drag this out of court.
Dr. Nyao Tamaklo is my next guest on Prime Take. So do stay on this channel on Friday at 7:10 a.m. We're having a conversation with someone of many parts, a doctor, a retired military officer, a football administrator, and also a diplomat. But now, let's go back and talk football politics. President of the Ghana Football Association, Ket Okreku, he has reported Tema Youth owner Wilfred Kweku Osei to the Ghana Police Service for allegedly engaging assailants to kill him. Well, the police extended an invite to Wilfred Kweku Osei last week, Thursday, and asked him to appear before the police on Friday. However, Wilfred Kweku Osei appeared before the police on Monday, and that was when he was told that there is a report which has been submitted by the president of the Ghana Football Association claiming that he has engaged some 5 assassins to kill him for 200,000 Ghana cedis. Wilfred Kweku Osei Palmer denied those claims. However, he admitted that he's not a friend of the president of the Ghana Football Association. When the police asked him whether he was friends with Ket Okreku, he said he can never be a friend to someone who has attacked his investment, which is forcing Tema Youth not to qualify to the Premier League, and also having his club to be relegated to Division 2 in Ghana football. And he's expected to appear before the police later today. The police has also told him that as and when they are able to gather some kind of evidence, they will place a phone call to him to appear before the police. But he is expected to return to the Criminal Investigation Department later today. We understand that Ket Okreku first reported the matter to the IGP, the Inspector General of Police, Dr. Ekufo Dampare, who asked the regional director, which is the Greater Accra Regional Director, to take up the matter. And that was when Kweku was invited for investigation. And he's assisting the police in this matter. To the Ghana Premier League, the new football season is expected to start on the weekend of September 9. Well, President of the Ghana Football Association, Kurt Okriko, has announced that the winner of the Ghana Premier League title for 2023-2024 will receive 500,000 Ghana cedis. The last winner of the title was given 300,000 Ghana cedis. Hence, there's an increment of that money to 500,000 Ghana cedis. He also said that the top 10 teams will be given financial packages for placing, for occupying the various positions in the end of the competition.
To ensure that we increase the competitiveness of our league, we are going to reward clubs that place from the first position to the 10th position on the league log. So the winner for the upcoming Premier League season will take home, obviously, the big trophy, 40 medals, and 500,000 Ghana cedis. I did say 500,000. Anyway, 500,000 Ghana cedis. The second place, which will be the first runner-up, will take home 200,000 Ghana cedis. And the third place team will take home 100,000 Ghana cedis. I'm sure we may have forgotten what the awards were in the just ended season. Mirima received 300,000. The second place received 150,000. Ediana and the third place received 80,000. In the new season 2023, the first, hopefully, the Olympics will take home 500,000, the second place 200,000, and the third place 100,000 Ghana cedis. Now, the fourth place team will receive a cash prize of 80,000 Ghana cedis. The fourth runner-up will receive 70,000 Ghana cedis. The fifth runner-up will receive 60,000 Ghana cedis. The sixth runner-up will receive 50,000 Ghana cedis. The seventh runner-up will receive 40,000 Ghana cedis. The seventh runner-up 30,000 cedis, and the ninth runner-up will take home 20,000 Ghana cedis, making it a total investment in cash prize alone of 1,150,000 Ghana cedis.
Details for you in our subsequent bulletins. This will wrap up AM Sports here with me, Muftau Nabila Abdullahi.
And many thanks to Muftau for bringing us the latest in sports. But it's time now to get into some of the stories we've been bringing to you so far here on the AM show. And one has got to do with the latest development on the African continent, talking about that shocking surprise by the armed forces in Gabon. They've seized power, deposing the country's president, Ali Bongo, which is now putting an end to an era, as some experts are calling it. There are also concerns about why the continent continues to experience a sharp rise in military takeovers in the last few years. We're fortunate to be joined now by Professor Kwesi Ening, who's at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Center, joining us for a brief conversation on this latest that we're learning of. And Prof, it's not really a good time, an exciting time to be talking to you, obviously, because just the other day we're talking about Niger, it was Mali before then, Burkina Faso, and now here we are again talking about another African country experiencing military takeover. how do we put an end to this, really?
I don't think we are going to put an end to it. I think what we should be asking ourselves really is, where will be the next, and probably the next 2 coup d'etats? Look, this is not rocket science. Basic forecasting and risk analysis will show you, can clearly point out where the next one is going to come from. There is a reluctance by us as Africans to call a spade a spade. When you have forms of governance that are corrupt, competent, that seeks to basically just hang on to power, you create the fundamentals or the foundation for these changes to take place. Gabon is a very interesting case. 56 years in power by the same family, a president who was so disastrously sick and unwell that he could barely walk. Okay? So even if in Gabon, his own political elites could not force him to resign, because in almost all constitutions, when you are fiscally incapable of delivering on your mandate, you have to step aside. Okay? But one also expects the African Union to have sent a delegation of leaders. Now look, our dear brother, maybe for the sake of your people, stand aside. Okay? Sovereignty is important, but sovereignty must be responsible. We cannot use the sovereignty debate by our heads of states to say, hey, well, Gabon is a sovereign state, so we cannot go in to talk. That was the essence of the African peer review mechanism, in which our peers would be able to advise, to nudge, to encourage, so that leaders will do what is right. That seems to have fallen in our abeyance.
The expectation was that mechanism would at least help to bring some standards onto the continent by telling ourselves what we want and how we want to approach our democracy. But what we have, and that's the criticism from some, is that we're just diluting the standards. We're not telling each other as we should.
No, we are not too good at telling each other what we should. What we are seeing is a sort of a heads of states club that makes the rules and the regulations, but the rules and the regulations do not concern them. So I'm right now at a meeting on silencing the guns, which is an African Union initiative that has been established since 2013. And the deadline keeps on being pushed and pushed and pushed, because those who are signatory to that document themselves do not believe in it. So the peer review mechanism that ought to have brought leaders to check on each other simply does not work again. So I can reel about 5 countries that are on the verge of even deeper political and military upheavals. But our leaders are just silent. Okay? The union is silent. And when you have those who govern in their 70s and 80s, ruling very young people who feel excluded, who have lost hope, who do not see any opportunities for improving their livelihoods, then the military option, which is very unfortunate, becomes the only option that is available. Let us be fair enough to ourselves and to say, time is up. We cannot deliver. It's time for us to leave, so we can bring these coup d'etats to an end. Otherwise, the continent is going to face yet another decade of military coups, of counter coups, and of more violence, leading to underdevelopment, leading to deeper poverty and the lack of jobs, health, education.
This will certainly take us 3 decades back, knowing what happened in the 70s. But it's also about decisive leadership and the ability of the continental body, the African Union, to deal with this. But we're not seeing that. My good friend Ike Bensa likes to take it this way, that we'll see a textbook approach towards dealing with this. Call a summit, suspend Gabon from the African Union, get the sub-regional body to do the same within the Central African Republic, African region. And then the next thing is to begin to engage the military regime. How else do we need to approach these, coup d'etats, and how do we handle the militaries that are taking over power?
No, we can't handle and we can't order the militaries because our multilateral institutions are failed in their primary responsibilities of ensuring that sovereignty is responsible, that sovereignty creates legitimacy, that sovereignty does not begin to be used as a buzzword for simply just hanging on to power. The African Union has a reel of normative frameworks around unconstitutional changes of government. Now, Mr. Bongo and his family alone have governed for 56 years. Okay, the union has kept quiet. They've changed their constitutions. They've murdered people. They've intimidated the media. They've intimidated the judges. The union was quiet throughout all this. Now, when our multilateral institutions that we have voluntarily signed on to become members are incapable of applying their own rules that they have set for themselves, then the efficacy and the usefulness of those organizations begin to be questioned. And I think the African Union has a very difficult uphill task to convince the people of Gabon when it comes reading some dusty documents. It is not that easy. Both ECOWAS and the African Union are losing credibility, and their actually continued survival is actually at risk right now because their empirical usefulness or utility for this continent is at a very low place. They have not done.
The question about the implication for not just Africa, but even what that will feed to the West Africa sub-region has come up. Many saying that this might radicalize the entire sub-region, knowing that already we have about 4 of our territories under military rule. The fear is that more and more persons or in the military might be radicalized to do the same within the West Africa sub-region. You have the likes of Senegal having their own challenges. The president there attempting to run for a 3rd term. It's also sparking lots of tension within the country as well. Do you feel that there's a direct implication for the West Africa sub-region, just knowing that, well, it's in Central Africa, by the way?
Well, I mean, the essence of being a member of a multilateral institution is that those institutions can serve as checks and balances on how states behave and can moderate state behavior to ensure that they comply with the rules that they have set for themselves. We saw how Mr. Bongo, in his wobbly state, fidgeted with the constitution, people drummed and danced, and we are seeing Macky Sall deliberately manipulating the process, okay, in which he claimed that he's not running for a 3rd term, but the opposition leader has been thrown into jail, the opposition party banned, and ECOWAS is quiet, and the African Union is quiet. Okay, now, when these institutions cannot moderate the behavior of Mr. Macky Sall, and something happens in Senegal, then they do not have the moral authority to come and read the normative frameworks. And we are seeing a similar tendency happening also in Cameroon. Okay, so our institutions have a critical role to play in helping to prevent these excesses that lead to military rule. Militaries take up guns way after the coups have taken place. Okay, way after civilians in power have manipulated constitutions, been corrupt, undermined, public processes, and basically hollowed out the state. When it happens that then coups have already taken place, the military only uses a gun to give it the final.
There's no alternative to democracy. What's your take on that?
Well, I think my take is that we need hybrid forms of democracy in which we bring some of our traditional institutions back to play a critical role. Chieftains, women's groups, youth groups. The democracy that has been handed to us does not speak to our lived experiences. It doesn't speak to our reality. If you look at the African Union's governance architecture, it doesn't speak to our lived reality. We need to be bold enough to say what works for us. Let's sit around the table, let's have a conversation, and then let's come to some conclusions and some decisions where we do things and establish the systems that work for us as best as possible.
Okay, and now we're looking forward to, the issues that may come out of this coup. Obviously, the military will form their new regime, and the question about how long is too long for a military regime to say. We've seen the decision or the announcement from the military junta in Niger promising to return the country to constitutional order in the next 3 years. The fear is that will be the same thing for this regime. Is it not the case that simply we're seeing the military have more and more taste to control political power?
Look, when those who lead have not read the document upon which they seek to engage a recalcitrant regime, and here I'm talking about the ECOWAS case, behaves in such a way that it locks itself into a corner where it does not have any wriggle, then you actually hand over power to the military regime that you ought to have sought behavioral changes. It is ECOWAS's, misreading of the Niger case that has brought about these tensions. So yes, in Gabon, the African Union will continue talking, but they will agree to some transition period because the African Union does not have the moral standing and the moral authority to issue instructions to anybody in Gabon because they kept quiet, they whined and dined with Bongo, even when he was doing the wrong thing. And they realized the responsibility for our organizations to do what is right. These organizations are not decorative organizations. They must be seen to be applying the normative frameworks about how, constitutional forms of government must be run, the role of independent judiciaries, electoral commissions, role of the free media. These are contested and contentious issues and processes. But it is a learning process also. ECOWAS and African Union have failed their member states, have failed the country. It's most important.
It's stoking the continental debate once more. President Akufo-Addo has commented on that before. He's even proposed it to the West Africa Sub-Regional Body, ECOWAS, for the consideration of a framework or a treaty on term limits. But sovereignty comes in the way almost all the time when that conversation comes up. Looking at what's happening in Gabon now, 56 years, one family controlling, an entire generation, if I should say. You have similar incidents, for instance, in the neighboring Republic of Togo, where you have one family reigning for that long. How do we juxtapose the conversation of sovereignty and having a continental framework that will enforce term limits?
I think the continental framework already has the term limits in there. But the discourse around sovereignty is that sovereignty must be perceived as responsibility. Sovereignty is not a term that we simply flung around without the responsibilities that come with it. The legitimacy that comes out of being a sovereign nation is that you are responsible to the needs of your citizens. And it is this interlinkage between international norms around sovereignty, the domestic imperatives of responsibility that brings about legitimacy. Bongo lost legitimacy long ago. The African Union failed in confronting him to say enough is enough. So if we want to bring sovereignty to the center of the debate as responsibility, as delivering public welfare goods, as protecting citizens, then we need to ensure that the ECOWAS and the African unions on this continent also play their role. They are able to hold these governments to account. Because immediately we fail to do that, and with the demographic imperatives, then the shifts and the shaking of our societies will mean that the military will continue to step.
And one unique trend, and one unique trend we seem to be, seeing all throughout the recent coup d'etats across the continent is the manner in which, or if you want to call it the modus operandi of the military this time round. No bloodshed, quote unquote. There's no casualty when it comes to the health and safety of the incumbent president who's been deposed. And then you seem to have public support, either natural, organic, or inorganic, whichever way you describe it, for the military regime that's taking over power. Is this not a bait, just leading us gradually to that cliff where we may eventually fall off if care is not taken?
No. I think we shouldn't make it that complicated. Why do people seek political office? You seek political office because you think you have something in your arsenal to transform people's lives and to have a positive impact on people's lives. So this is a contestation between different forms of government or different forms of governance. Now, when you have a youthful population who are excluded from the positive fruits of democratic governance, of economic growth, of high unemployment, then you have the underpinnings of those who support any form of change. And if you listen to the narratives from extremist groups, those narratives are tapping into the unemployment, the lack of schools, the lack of training opportunities, and are creating this hope that, look, were we to come, we will be able to satisfy your needs. We know they will not be able to satisfy those needs. But politics is about tapping into that vein of frustration and turning that frustration to create a support base. And that is what the military has been very successful in doing in Guinea, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and now in Gabon. And then 2 more countries are just in the queue to experience a similar thing.
And when you say 2 more, you're referring to?
That I will keep under my belt for now.
I hope you're not picked up by national security, but anyway, it's too early for that to start happening this morning. Grateful that you've been able to spend some time with us this morning, Professor Kwesi Aning, at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Center. Okay. Time now to also explore some other, happenings internationally, which has a possibility of impacting the economy of Ghana, and that's got to do with the outreach which, one of the largest economic blocs, BRICS, is attempting to do. BRICS is an alliance of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, controlling over 40% of the world's population and over 26% of global trade. But now, the traditional alliances, they're expanding their scope, doing an outreach, not just to Africa, but across the world. Now we have the confirmation, and I was in Johannesburg last week speaking to Ghana's High Commissioner to South Africa, pointing to us that the country is, quote, exploring the feasibility of the opportunities that BRICS will present to Ghana and the possibility, actually, of joining the economic framework. So what benefits will joining BRICS bring to the continent, especially to emerging economies such as Ghana? And should we opt to join this alliance, knowing that the country since independence has been very much dependent on the Bretton Woods institutions? Joining us now is Dr. Sherif Mahmoud Khalid, Associate Professor in Accounting and Finance. We're also being joined now by Dr. Said Iddrisu, who's an economist, Louisiana Economic Development. Good morning to you, gentlemen. Welcome to the show. I'll come to you shortly, Dr. Said, but first of all, Dr. Sherif, the point about what BRICS stands for now, looking at where the world and the global economy is shifting towards. We used to describe them as the emerging economies.
Yeah, that's right.
Looking at the GDP figures now and comparing that to, for instance, the G20 framework, they're way above what their purchasing power and GDP, put together is. Over 30% of global, the global economy. That's a significant figure. So why is this shift, first of all, happening? And do you see that as a direct competition to other frameworks that we have pre-existing?
Well, obviously, it's if you look at international trade, it's a matter of geopolitics and competition and national interest, and that's what is panning out. But as to the extent to which BRICS can go, that's quite an interesting perspective that we ought to be looking at, and the real impact it will have. I mean, this is like a loose terminology that got coined by an asset manager, Goldman Sachs asset manager, that's really, trying to gather some momentum. But I really don't know what it brings to the African economy, and by extension, Ghana, if we join, because I tend to be quite skeptical about what I term over-internationalization. And when you over-internationalize, it dilutes real important intangibles. Because we're talking about them controlling, you're talking about population size, land mass, and all of that. Because if you have India, China within that bracket, definitely you're going to have that in terms of GDP measurements. But how does this trickle down or break down or disaggregate it among its member states? That would be an interesting question to look at. And that's, if we begin to break that out, you see that that is really very infinitesimal.
I recall listening to the president when he was delivering his address at the BRICS summit in Johannesburg. Listening to him and making my personal judgments from the whole that day. Let me just speak on one of his words. He says, now more than ever is the time for increased cooperations, partnerships with emerging economies such as the BRICS. That's his, belief in where the world is shifting to.
In our own backyard, we've got ECOWAS and the likes of that. How effective are we using that? Right? When we cannot just even get a joint venture or a refinery between Ghana and Nigeria, that's a difficulty. How are you going to have such more of an important trade with India or China for that matter? These are very important economies. Until we sort of disaggregate and break all of this down, it's very difficult to tell what BRICS bring to the table.
But we've given ourselves away already. You look at China, for instance. China owes a third of our external debt. India, pharmaceuticals, they're controlling that market. We cannot do without these.
But within
economies.
Within the BRIC framework, what offers has China? Right? Are they in a position to give us concessionary loans? Are they in a position to give us moratoriums if they give us loans? So there's still no real meaty framework within the BRICS bracket. There's some positive to it. I wouldn't doubt that, which is that it gives you some international clouds, it gives some international leverage that you've joined this club. So can we treat them right? But China, as you would know, is a very interesting country. Regardless of which community or group of economic unit it belongs to, its national sovereignty runs supreme when it comes to its economics. And that's quite interesting to look at.
I've been looking at that. All of us are worried about what the implications will be. But it does suggest, and Dr. Said, I'll come to you shortly, it does suggest that, this whole point is about African countries lining up once more for where funds will come from in the midst of a global, crisis. That's what the leaders are doing. Over 60 of them present in Johannesburg, just to say we need to increase cooperation with the BRICS. So it's about money.
My point is that we already have this existing framework, right? Apart from ECOWAS, we could go to, COMESA, Common Market for Eastern and Southern Africa, all of these, all of these happenings. How have we consolidated that within the African continent?
But there's free money. There's free money coming.
From who?
Yeah, from China, I guess.
Is China really giving
I guess.
Right? don't forget, we're suffering the hangover of the big spending spree China made through the Belt and Road Initiative.
Right.
We still haven't recovered from that. Right? There was such a big punch bowl out here, and we're still drowning ourselves in that. So until we recover from all of these things, and until we're able to tick our own boxes to know what we really want, rather than always hanging on to low-hanging fruits of free money, I don't think this brings a lot. It's just like Nigeria being a member of
OPEC. I see. We'll explore the alternatives shortly.
The rate that BRICS is going, we could basically say that we may just probably wake up one day and having the whole world, with the exception of the US and maybe the Western countries, joining BRICS. And before I get into the details, for the benefit of the listeners, let me just break it down, because there seems to be so much misconception and misunderstanding about this whole concept of BRICS. BRICS is not a new thing. It has been in existence since 2009. It was formed on June 16 in Russia by Brazil, Russia, India, and China. South Africa joined in 2010. So if you look at it, it has been in existence for long. And the whole purpose of BRICS is just for political and economic reasons. Economic reasons, you could look at it in terms of trade and all that. Again, if you look at BRICS currently, as it was forming, just about 13 years ago, it already controls 41% of the world population, and also in terms of world GDP, about 24 to 26%. And again, in terms of world trade, world international trade is contributing almost 16%. So it tells you that that block is growing day by day. And if you look at it specifically, there are key issues, concerns around political and security, economic and financials, as well as cultural and exchanges, trying to exchange cultures between its members. And as we speak, 6 new members are being invited. During the summit in South Africa, 6 new countries are being invited to join in January 2020. Actually submitted their applications to join BRICS. So it's telling you that they are in a serious expansion state. They are currently in a serious expansion state.
How do we perceive this? Do we perceive this to be competition, or just a simple case of, the new era, as some would describe this?
Well, I don't.
You would, which seems to suggest that you will support Ghana in the event we want to opt for BRICS.
Totally, I would totally support Ghana.
Yeah, I see. But Dr. Sheriff disagrees with you on that?
No, well, it's not that I disagree. I'm just wondering what it brings to the table as far as Ghana.
But it's pointed out the immense benefits, GDP growth, the capital they control now in the world market.
Well, I don't see that happening much as far as BRICS is concerned, because there's still size is not quality. You look at economic blocs, the G7, the G20, and the likes, which are the most powerful, regardless of what it is. So there's still a lot of unpacking to do here, right? And I wouldn't sit and make a blanket statement that this is what we stand to. We are headquarters in, or we already, the headquarters of the International African Free Trade Continental Agreement.
Yes.
It already sits in Ghana. How are we driving that within? So within a BRIC emblem, what becomes our efficacy when it comes to the free trade continental?
Yeah, but so if everyone is joining the party, why not go and just share in the joy of it?
Sometimes you don't.
The Arab League, Saudi Arabia, Egypt becoming one of the African countries to join. That's significant.
Well, it is, but to what extent? As of now, that's what I'm asking.
There's a new development bank. There's a new development bank providing capital to developing countries as well.
Yeah,
that will come up. It's an opportunity for Ghana.
Well, and that's still for growth, right? Well, I'm not anathema to the experiences of the Bretton Woods institutions, right? You look at Germany, for example, which emanated from the Marshall Plan, right, of 30 years ago. So there are other opportunities in America or Americanization of economies and the likes of that. But what I am saying is that if we have 100 member states within BRICS, when push comes to shove, individually, every country would be competing for its own needs and aspirations as far as economic power is concerned.
De-dollarization is key on the agenda for BRICS.
Yes.
And they want to achieve that using local currencies. That's going to promote maybe the strength of the cedi someday.
How many local currencies? Individual country local currencies? If that happened, what kind of economy or global economy would we have?
You feel it's not feasible?
How feasible is that? That's going to be chaotic economically.
Yeah. But they've told us that, they want to go back to the gold standards, back this up. And with the likes of Saudi having petroleum
because
mines,
I'm even looking at how
China
all these
coming
individual
all of
central
that.
banks of these countries are going to come together.
Yeah.
It's going to be a long, interesting conundrum to look at.
It looks like you're just not positive about BRICS.
I'm not too positive about it, I must be honest with you. It's okay to belong to a big club, to use that to flex your muscles, but I don't see what it brings that our existing setups do not bring.
Yeah, but
is it that we don't cooperate with Saudi? Is it that we don't have a good cooperation with Egypt? Or is it that they're going to set up a real, tangible, sustainable investment measure that is quite different to what we have in the terms of Bretton Woods institutions? Are they in the capacity to do that?
If you expect, and the saying often goes that
I'm
if you
just playing
expect,
devil's advocate.
I get that perfectly. If you expect a different solution, you don't keep doing things the same way.
Yeah.
For over the last 6.
But it's the same way that BRICS is going through, bringing people together within the economic union to fight that. It's the same way. It's the same model. How is that different?
Yeah, but over the years, and that's been part of the criticism. We've been with the West. We've been with the Bretton Woods. The cyclical nature of our economy is just so boring for some.
And my point is, when we take out China,
Yes.
And other key economies within this, what is the aggregate economic worth of BRICS?
But that's why they're there. That's why China is there.
Yeah, but that's why I still tell you how China plays when it comes to the international stage, and for that matter, when it comes to national security, its economic, it plays a very individual game when push comes to shove. So how are we guaranteed that China is going to come to our aid in that regard? And I've given an example of the spending spree of the Belt and Roads Initiative, whose hangover we're still struggling with for now. And even with airports or some investment ports being seized by the Chinese government and the likes of that. So it still tells you that there's no cheap money anywhere. And the days of cheap money is long gone. So it's even emerging at the time that we are having a drought of cheap money. So I'm quite interested. I'm vested in this, and I will be monitoring to see where things go as far as this is concerned.
Dr. Saad, if you were the president today and you're running an IMF program, you require assurances from sovereigns such as the Paris Club and then China. China owes the biggest portion of it. They are a part of BRICS actually. What will stop you from just taking advantage of this multilateral framework? At least it gets you closer and closer to the likes of Xi Jinping, who's controlling the Chinese economy. He might forgive you, give you some free cash to go home with.
Well, if you look at BRICS as just free cash, you'll be diminishing the whole purpose and the value of such an organization.
Right.
I think we should shift our attention, or we should shift our mindset from this free cash stuff going on and all that, because at the end of the day, whether it's the West or whatever it is, you don't even get free cash. Let's be realistic about that. There's nothing like free cash. They always come with some conditionalities. And again, the idea of joining BRICS and falling out with the West, to me, doesn't hold water in the sense that if you take, for example, Ghana being an IMF beneficiary, we are a member of the IMF institution. We form part of the 190 membership. You understand?
Yeah.
So it is not like Ghana is joining BRICS and saying that we are leaving the IMF. Even China is still a member of the IMF. Russia is a member of the IMF, but they are all in BRICS. Again, if you come to the World Bank, Ghana is also a member of the World Bank. So the whole idea of Ghana joining a new bloc doesn't mean that we are shifting away from West. It doesn't mean we are shifting away from IMF. It doesn't mean we are shifting away from World Bank and other Western development institutions. And again, the notion should be diffused that these institutions are owned by America. Probably, maybe behind the scenes, America is a major contributor, but it doesn't mean that those institutions belong to America. That is why we have member states. So Ghana is IMF. We can say that IMF belongs to Ghana too, because we are a member state of the IMF. So our joining of BRICS doesn't automatically mean IMF will disqualify Ghana.
Okay,
One of the advantages of BRICS too that people don't, really pay attention to is the inclusiveness. Look, currently, I would describe the world as an apartheid world, where minority always decides to make decisions for the majority. And you could twist it anyhow you want, but that is the fact. The Western world always makes decisions for the entire world, which has gotten to a stage whereby there is going to be a paradigm shift, whether you like it or not. So whether you join BRICS today or not, give it 30 years, give it 50 years, 40 years time. Believe me, you might want to join BRICS and you will not even have an opportunity.
Okay, so your argument is we strike while the iron is hot, right? We're going now.
You have to strike while the iron is hot, and you have to strike with care at the back of your mind that you are not joining BRICS because of geopolitical reasons. You are joining BRICS because of the economic advantages that your nation will stand to benefit. That should be the whole idea of any nation joining BRICS. For example, look at Iran. Iran has been on sanctions. All of a sudden, they are being included in BRICS now with the hope of joining in 2024. So what does it tell you? It defeats the whole sanctions upon sanctions that America has been throwing on Iran in order to separate it politically from the rest of the world. So that sort of inclusiveness is now is like a new hope is being given to countries. Look at Uganda. Uganda, as an African nation, passes their gay bill based on their culture, right? U.S. sits there and says that they are imposing sanctions on Uganda. And if U.S. impose sanctions on Uganda, the rest of the world, Western country will follow. At the end, the Ugandan people will suffer. So a democratic nation putting another nation under serious suffering. BRICS is coming to cut out some of these things. Look at Ghana. Our parliament is going ahead to pass the LGBTQ bill. So if they go ahead to pass it and the president, whatever the bill goes through, and America decides that, you know what, I am putting sanctions on Ghana, do you know how many citizens will be affected? So will it be right for America to just play the political policeman to imprison whoever they want? I think we have to look at it in the whole and not just, with this anti-American.
Okay, I have a fear, and I'll put that to the two of you. The fear about, the bigger economies within the framework, India, China, and the potential damage to our local economies if indeed we join the framework. The fear is we might be swallowed up by the bigger corporations.
Like, if there were any fruits to be bared from BRICS, right, South Africa is alien energy crisis and all of that happening. We could have seen some tangibilities happening.
Yeah. But at least I need to point out, I was there just at the tail end of the summit.
Yes.
China is giving free energy supply, of course, supporting to provide essential supplies to, essential services. Hospitals, schools will benefit from this. Right. And there's also an additional grant of, I think, somewhere around 500 million rand or so. And these were, so this is practical tangible announcements that were made. So if it's a benefit.
It's a benefit. Let them come in. When they trickle in, we can have another conversation about that. But then again, when we talk about sanctions, when we join blocs, we rather even make it very easy for sanctions. Because once the target body or the body instituting the sanction is able to tame the bloc to effect it, then it becomes very easy to rather even have a sanction rather than when you don't belong to a bloc. So I don't see the matter of sanctions coming in here as far as that is concerned. But then again, as you said, I am skeptical about over-internationalization and over-globalization. That has an inimical effect on local economies. If we can begin to look at that, and there's nothing wrong with joining BRICS, right? I'm playing my devil's advocate here, but I'm, giving out the fine details of what I stand for and what I represent. If we're able to say, okay, well, we've put a team together. These are the modalities, or this is what we're going in with to join in BRICS. But there's no way you can go into an economic bloc without geopolitical reasons. They go hand in hand. Right. So what is it that Ghana stands to gain? And as I've said, we've just kickstarted the African Free Trade Continental Agreement, which we are headquarters. How are we going to play this out? Still having its eminent mandate and pursuing what we need to achieve. Because
but it's possible, isn't it? When you have this economic bloc saying we're doing an outreach to Africa, and we cannot shy away from the fact that the Chinese economy has some significant influence over the many economies across Africa. So we can't do without them if the AFCFTA would have to progress. That's the notion, right? The reason for which is strategic.
But at the
moment,
moment, we are very friendly with them. Do we have issues with China? Would it take BRICS for China to be better appreciative of Ghana? That's another fundamental question.
Yeah, it's an interesting question.
Yeah, would it take BRICS to do that? If it would, then but I'm just asking. We don't know. So that's why it's interesting for us to ask the right questions and don't rush into a frenzy of joining clubs that, 1,000 more clubs will emerge as far as economic issues and as far as globalization is concerned. But how do we strategically position ourselves? I've just given an example of even when Nigeria was getting into OPEC, it was a big announcement. But how is Nigeria's play in OPEC? Right. I'm not saying they are not getting whatever benefit, but what African countries, so not a U.S. well debate, right? But it is a debate of integration, it's a debate of benefit. And when it comes to all of this, individual country sovereignty and what they stand to benefit stands supreme. And that's where I am very skeptical, especially with China, when it's playing big boy in a club, because it knows what.
Okay, I recall speaking to the global chair of the BRICS Business Council, who was pointing to me that, the experience of working within the BRICS framework hasn't been a relationship of someone dictating to you what you should do, and that there's free will within this trading bloc or economic
bloc. So we can interrogate that.
That's the argument. And I'm just giving you the proposition from the other side. Some say if that's what's happening within, we're not within, I don't know what happens there, then it should be a better alternative.
Well, I've not seen fine details of this. This is just a quotation you're given from the chair. And I'm saying if they have a document to that effect, which is a working document and framework, they can put it out there so we can have a real interrogation of that to see how. I'm in no way, don't get me wrong, suggesting that Ghana should not join. I'm just asking the right questions. And, we have to put our ducks in a row to be in readiness to appreciate that this is what this brings, and joining it brings that.
Okay.
It's just like the UN. And what impact it does. The arguments that international or globalization aspects to say that maybe that's our living usefulness problem. Those are things, the jury's still out there to judge all of that. Do we see that happening in BRICS? I don't know. So these are still early stages, right? Yeah, we can encourage countries to consider. That's the word I would say. Consider and look at the fine details and see if it's something to go by.
Okay, Dr. Saad Iddrisu, the point about what we stand to benefit. Can we itemize some of them, possible ones? I don't know if you have any.
All right, let me just narrow it down, to, let's say a Ghanaian is in Ghana, right?
Yeah.
And due to Ghana joining BRICS, you trade in China. Based on the laws or based on the BRIC benefits, you, the Ghanaian who buy your goods from China, you'll be able to do that with the Ghanaian cedi. You wouldn't need $1 because that is the whole purpose of BRICS, to make sure that countries or member states will be able to trade in local currencies. So you don't have to go and convert your Ghanaian cedi to the dollar again before you go to China to buy your goods. That is a big advantage to me. You understand? Because at the end of the day, it is supporting. It has a direct impact on business growth in your own economy. When you are able to take out the middleman, let me put it that way, which is the dollar. Even with that, there might be some challenges, which experts have already raised. Challenges with regards to the currency convertibility. But like I said, this is a growing organization. And with every growing organization, all these issues will be noted down and corrections being made. Issues in terms of, the SWIFT global system.
Yeah.
So alternatives are being looked at, whereby you wouldn't necessarily depend on SWIFT, which is the global system that is put in by the West for international monetary transactions and all that. So let's say America doesn't like you, like what just happened recently in Russia. They were cut off from the SWIFT system, which made it difficult for their banking system and all that. So it's telling the whole world to look at alternatives. The whole world cannot just be centered on one individual making decisions for over 95 countries.
Yeah.
I think it's not really fair if you want to look at
my only concern has got to do with the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. You have a clear expression from over 50 heads of state across the continent to say, we want to significantly boost intra-African trade, and yet this same cohort is moving towards China, India, Brazil and Russia and saying, let's form a new alliance. What are we doing to our continent?
You see, it's like you say that once you join a bloc, you are shifting from the old bloc. That is not.
That's not the argument. I'm even looking at it through the perspective of intra-Africa trade, significantly down, less than 16%, or I mean somewhere around 16% in terms of intra-African trade. Our target through the AFCFTA is to shoot up the numbers, right? So why then encourage trade with some emerging power out there who says, well,
the more
trading
partners you have as a country, the better you stand to gain in terms of balance of trade and all that. So it doesn't mean that making new friends and opening up your borders for more trade will limit the gains you are going to make from trade. And it doesn't mean that beginning to trade with other members within the BRICS, Ghana will stop trading with its African counterparts.
Okay.
That is not even the whole idea.
Yeah.
You understand? And again, there have been questions raised about, we are in this organization, we are in that organization, and what are the benefits? Fine, we have been loyal to the Western nations. Let's put it that way. What has been the benefit to Ghana too? Let's look at it.
Yeah.
We are still where we are.
That's a big question facing.
After 60 years, we are still where we are.
Yeah.
So
okay.
what do we stand to lose if we try?
If we join, that's a question that's facing Dr. Sharif Khalid.
Yeah, I don't think we are where we are. That would not be a very accurate statement.
Well, we're still where we are, isn't it?
In terms of what? Because the point is, look, what I would say is IMF. Let's not see this as a binary issue of the West against the rest of the world.
Are we not pretending if we don't do it? That's it.
Are we pretending, right? Other developed economies, including the UK and the likes, have benefited from those institutions, haven't they?
Right.
There's record. It's on record. The Marshall Plan wasn't a classic example that supported the German economy and took it to greater heights and became a giant within Europe. It is what we do with what benefit we get. So if you get an IMF or a World Bank conditionality and you treat it like change from whatever without using it to inject into the economy to propel it, definitely you have yourself going back to them and blaming them.
Okay.
I'm not saying they are the best or they are the saints. The world thrives on interest. Where is our interest? That's the question we should be asking ourselves.
If you're President Akufo-Addo, you're not opting for BRICS?
I would consider it. That would be my measured word.
Okay. We need to go. Dr. Saad, you have any final thoughts on this? And I need to point out also...
My final statement will just be about the inclusion that I was talking about. Inclusion in the sense that it's like you opening up your borders to more friends. It's like having probably one source of income, all of a sudden you having multiple sources of income.
All right.
It doesn't mean that Ghana joining BRICS, we are leaving the Western institutions or we are moving away from the West. We are just expanding our horizon for the benefit of our economy.
Dr. Saad Iddrisu, thank you for joining us this morning. I need to also point out that there appears no French-speaking African country seems to be moving towards that.
Well, their currency is heavily backed by Paris, by CFA France. So there's a dimension to that.
Yeah.
And that's why you have the CFA that has been very strong and stable for a very long period of time. So there's an economic element. And I wouldn't see that happening as of yet.
Oh, you don't want us to spend the yen?
Well, Well, China is an interesting country to watch.
Interesting.
Right, yeah.
But grateful, Dr.
Thank
Seri,
you.
for joining us this morning.
Thank you, sir.
And you're with the AM show here on the Joy News channel. We'll be back shortly. And in 1943, when it was founded, it was just aimed at providing good services to people resident in Europe in the wake of the Second World War. But 65 years down the line, the impact of the Catholic Relief Services has spread all over the world. And the group says it is launching and marking that milestone in grand styles. The reason for which we're joined now by a lady and a gentleman helping us to talk about the journey of the Catholic Relief Services and what the years to come holds for the organization. Joining us now is Ms. Jamilatu Mashood, Localization Partnership Capacity Strengthening Advisor for the Catholic Relief Services, and also Daniel Momone is the country representative for the Catholic Relief Services. And I was just having that conversation backdoor that when I heard your names, I was like, well, are you all Catholics, by the way? It was the first question, Daniel, and you recall me asking you about it. That points to how diverse this group is. But for those who do not know about the Catholic Relief Services, just break it down for us and tell us about your history and how you were formed.
No, thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be on the show. So as you've rightly mentioned, we are 65 years this year. We started way back in 1943. On the back of the Second World War, when there was a humanitarian crisis in Europe, and the Catholic community in the US decided to intervene. And so that was actually the start of the Catholic Relief Services. And when Ghana gained independence in 1957, we started off here as well. And I think the Ghana program is the first in sub-Saharan Africa.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So, organizationally, we are 80 years, and in Ghana, we are 65. We work in about 114 countries, serving over 100 million people every single day. In Ghana, over the time, we've implemented several programs, and I'm sure many people quickly or readily remember CRS when it comes to school feeding. So we've implemented food and nutrition security programs, health programs, agriculture, education, peace building, and a host of other programs. So,
and Jamila, too, I must point out that if there's anything unique about the journey of the CRS, it's just how consistent you have been and how you've kept the momentum going. What's behind that success story of trying to push this over 65, almost 65 years, ever since its existence here in Ghana. What's the secret behind that?
Thank you so much, and good morning to your audience, and good morning to everyone listening to us. So the Catholic Relief Services, we have enjoyed, the tremendous partnership from the government of Ghana, from the communities that we serve. In fact, for the work wouldn't have been possible without the support of the government, the support of the people that we serve. In fact, they have led the initiatives that my senior colleague has mentioned in terms of water, sanitation, and hygiene with health interventions. It has emanated from the communities that we serve. So all these 65 years, our existence has been in Ghana has been because of the wonderful collaboration. That
maybe because we're not giving examples. Our viewers are wondering, okay, in what areas do you operate? How do you go about impacting lives? Daniel, what's the brief response to that? Even before we talk about the anniversary that you have coming up and what plans you have.
So we intervene in a lot of areas, but as an organization, we let government priorities and community priorities define our interventions. And so as we speak today, we have programs in maternal and child health, complementing government's effort to ensuring that we have access to referral, like ambulance systems. So if you go to the rural communities in several northern, areas, you would see motor tricycle ambulances. We have modified to be able to serve as ambulances, serving very rural communities. We also have programs in water and sanitation. There's hardly a community in the northern part that you wouldn't find a borehole constructed by us. Not only serving communities, but schools and healthcare facilities, ensuring that they have access to water. We have programs in youth, so training young people in different skills areas.
Also, it's not just about children.
No, it's not just about children. Right. We even have programs in peace building. These days we have this issue of the prevention of violent extremism in Ghana, so we intervene in all those areas as well.
But how do you get to do all of that? Where does the money come from, I guess?
Very good question, yeah. So we are one of the largest recipients of U.S. government funding, globally. And so we receive funds from various donors, including the U.S. government, foundations, even quite recently corporate bodies. And also we have discretionary resources we apply. So you can see on the screen some of the
Okay, so this is the ambulance you were talking about.
Yeah. And let me talk a bit about this. I remember when we first launched this, we received a lot of criticisms in public. People felt it was inappropriate for a country like Ghana to be providing this to serve as ambulances. But in the absence of the ideal situation, this is a viable alternative. It's nimble enough to go to the hard-to-reach areas in the country, areas that the standard ambulance cannot even go to. So when you look outside of Accra, these ambulances are relieving many communities. This is a commodity van, so ensuring that medical supplies can get to rural communities. And we all know the supply chain challenges of the health system. So these commodity vans move medical supplies from regional and district centers right into communities.
And you also have the unit. I'm seeing a building here.
Yes, so let me talk about it, because this is
very
really important. Yes, this is one of the proudest initiatives we've ever implemented. I'm here, you can see the former US ambassador. We were commissioning Ghana's first ever rural emergency dispatch center. Now, why is this necessary? When someone in the rural community places a call for ambulance service, first it comes to Accra, is rerouted. The delay time can be up to 2 to 4 hours. So what we have done is to create these dispatch centers, managed entirely by the National Ambulance System service. So they manage it.
You don't seem to be owning the thing. You create it for the community and just give back to them.
Because that is sustainability. So we work with existing government systems and structures, so that our programs are long-lasting and that they are also mainstreamed into government programs.
So you gave this very center to the ambulance service to manage?
Exactly, to manage. But the novelty of it is that the district assembly provided the quarters. We provided the innovation and the equipment. National Ambulance Service provided the staffing. And so this project is ended, but it's still ongoing. And if you speak to the CEO of the National Ambulance Service, he's doing everything possible in conjunction with the Ghana Health Service to scale this up to other areas.
Okay, you know what? What's inspiring about this is it's from individual donations, not coming from the central government. So you need to applaud that. But also beyond it, we see that most of your activities are concentrated up north.
Yes.
Is there a specific reason?
There's a specific. So maybe let me. So over time, we've intervened in several communities across Ghana, several regions, and school feeding being one. We've also intervened in OT region. We respond where the need is. Even quite recently, we've drilled boreholes in Bono and Ashanti areas. But we want to target our resources where the need is greatest. And so in selecting our communities, we look at government priorities, donor priorities. So for example, if you look at most of the donors, in the next 5-10 years, they have prioritized very remote, hard to reach areas, looking at the demographic indicators of the country, you know. So we're intervening in these hard to reach areas, ensuring that we can lift them up to contribute positively to some of the national indicators.
You know what, if this is not worth celebrating after 65 years, I wonder what else you should be celebrating. And that's why I want to hear from Jamila, to the plan that you have to just celebrate this milestone. I mean, you've done tremendous work, you agree?
Yes, thank you very much. So we have a series of activities planned for next week. Would have, most of it would be at the community level with the people that we serve. We would have commissioning of a limited mechanized water system at the health facility, which is serving the health facility and the communities. We would have our senior vice president joining us from the US, from our headquarters in US. We have an emergency dispatch center in Gushegu and Kariga, where there will be some activities to mark this event. We also have an early childhood development center, the first of its kind in Northeast, that we will be having a series of activities with mothers who use the service and the health facility as well. There will be a national event. It will be strictly by invitation with our government partners, our donor community, diplomatic corps, our partners, civil society organizations, the clergy in Accra on Thursday. We would also have some church service, Thanksgiving service, to be grateful to God for how far He has brought the organization and the people who support our work.
I see, and the future is indeed looking very bright for CRS. But let's look at possibly the plans that you also have, Daniel. Obviously, you would plan so you can execute in the coming years. Are we to see an outreach to other communities and areas?
Yes, so we, as I indicated, we intervene where the need is greatest, and we have a lot of interventions in the pipeline, particularly in the area of agriculture, and it would span several, I think we have about 11 regions. It's going to be about job creation and productivity, so supporting smallholder farmers to produce. We'll continue our wash and health interventions. So yes, we have a lot of programs aimed at targeting several other communities. But let me also talk about what the future holds for us, because as an organization, we believe that we are only here to support and not to sustain our existence. And so in the foreseeable future, we want to strengthen the capacity of our local partners, what we call localization, so that in line with our principle of subsidiarity as an organization, these local organizations can take forward the implementation of programs. But more importantly, that our future programs are going to really focus on system strengthening, because we believe so much in the capacity of the national government to implement programs. And nobody can reach scale and sustainability as much as governments, both at local and at the national level.
Sounds good. Jamila, any final words? Something that you'd want to leave our viewers with, that they need to know about the Catholic Relief Services? And as we look into the future, you should invite me for the 65th anniversary. I'm coming there, whether you like it or not.
Your invitation is automatic. Thank you very much. But just to add that, so I know you are aware of, if you've been to Makola Market, you would have seen our sisters, the head porters. Yes. We have this initiative with the Gender Ministry, putting up some skills development activities in Waliwali, which would retain these girls in their home to strengthen their families. And we are proud to say that more than 260 girls have graduated. In fact, they've gone through the NBTI exams, have qualified.
Oh, you're even training them?
Yes, they have acquired technical and vocational skills and have undertaken the exams and are graduating as part of this. We've all passed these exams. I mean, more than 260
You can't afford
girls.
to fail if you have this opportunity.
Yes, exactly. So this is something that we are very proud of, and we appreciate the support from the media. In fact, you've been very supportive of our initiatives. You have been with us even in the hard-to-reach areas, and we don't take that for granted at all. So we continue to count on your support to ensure that you even bring to the attention the areas that are the hard to reach, aside the statistics that we know, but the areas that you think that Catholic Relief Services or like organizations should be intervening in.
Daniel, for you?
Well, yeah, I think 65 years is almost a lifetime. You know, in many jurisdictions, it means that you're retired. But I like to think that we're only now warming up, because when you look at our socioeconomic needs, when you go to rural communities, the poverty and the deprivation is real. And so, you know, this is more of a, as we celebrate 65 years of intervention in Ghana, it's also a rallying call for us to realize that the work is not finished. In fact, it's unfinished business. And we are very grateful to our government partners, our donors, and our various partners. Because let me also mention, just in the spirit of partnership, that, you know, every result that we achieve is complemented by other organizations. So we all work together in the space. And so this is really a rallying call for us to intensify efforts if we are to meet the SDGs. And our organizational mantra is in their own hands. And that simply means that when we think about people and their development, it's not about what we bring to them, but they are also active participants in their own development. And so we are hoping that we can collaborate, government, the media, other organizations, donors, to ensure that Ghana is not lagging behind on the SDGs, and also that we can meet the aspirations of the ordinary Ghanaian, because the ordinary Ghanaian wants development today, not tomorrow, and not in 65 years' time.
Daniel, Jamila too, thank you for bringing relief to so many scores of people who are out there, hard to reach areas, and yet you're making life better for them. We're grateful.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We'll be back shortly. Please stay on the AM show. Hello there again, and it's good to have you back on the AM show. But it's time now to bring you that special roundtable I've been talking about all morning. The fact that Joy Business is bringing you the special conversation on Ghana's tax regime, which is considered to be very, very high. We're looking at the causes and, you know, exploring the possible remedies that could address this situation. And that's why we're having the discussion on the causes, the solution to Ghana's high tax systems. Our guests are ready, but Winston Amwa will be taking over from now to bring you that conversation as it takes off right now. Winston?
Well, thank you very much, Blessed Sugan. So we're about to get into that all-important conversation about Ghana's high tax regime, the causes and finding remedies. And there's a discussion on the causes and solutions to Ghana's high tax system. This morning, we're joined by Professor Charles Aka, who is an economist and associate professor at the Institute of Statistical, Social and Economic Research. He's joining us in studio. And we also get to, be joined by George Kwetia, who is president of the Chartered Institute of Taxation, Ghana. He'll be joining us via Zoom. And Dr. John Kwachi is director of Research, Institute of Economic Affairs, also joining us via Zoom. And I'm sure you may have heard this over and over and over again, that Ghana's tax to GDP compared to our peers, not the best. We've always talked about the situation where Ghana's 13% tax to GDP ratio woefully inadequate. We've cited examples such as Burkina Faso, that's over 20%. We've talked about Congo, La Côte d'Ivoire. Congo is at some 29.3%, and La Côte d'Ivoire also around 15.5%. So the critical question is, one, is it that we're not paying more taxes? Is it a case of taxing the already burdened with more, or we're not widening? And talking about widening the base, this is a conversation we've had over and over and over again. We've always talked about widening the tax net. Why is it so difficult for us to widen the tax net? This morning, that's a conversation we're having right here on the AM show, and is also live on the Super Morning Show on Joy 99.7 FM. It's Joy Business organizing this, and my name is Winston Amwa. And as already indicated, we have Professor Charles Aka in studio with us. Prof, good morning. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning.
And I believe that you're doing very well this morning.
Yes, by God's grace.
Great. Before we get into everything, and we're also joined on Zoom by Mr. Kwetia, who is the president of the Chartered Institute of Taxation, Ghana. Good morning, sir, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning. And
Great.
Good morning to your viewers and listeners.
That's George Kwetia. I'll be joined shortly by Dr. John Kwache, who is head of research of the Institute of Economic Affairs. But let me start off with you in studio, Professor Charles Aka. We've talked about this over and over again. This will not be the first time. Probably may not be the last. Our hope is that this becomes the last time we're talking about this situation. Consistently, we've talked about Ghana's tax to GDP. In fact, as part of our IMF program, we want to raise it to some 18% by the time we're done. We've asked ourselves that simple question. What is our problem? First of all, is the 13 adequate? Well, we say it's inadequate. What could make it adequate? Is it a case that we're not taxing the right sectors? We have fewer taxes? Well, the evidence says we have a lot of taxes. What is the problem?
Thank you very much. There are several determinants of this low tax capacity and tax effort. So the first thing is to find out what are the determinants of a good tax revenue in a country. And one of them is the structure of the economy. So, i.e., if the economy is structured, formalized in a way that the economy is also growing, then you can raise more tax. So, for example, you have a situation where a major part of the economy is informal sector. Another major part is mainly agriculture and trading, retailing, and wholesaling. The formal sector, manufacturing, for example, industry is totally not doing very well. So then that kind of structure already limits your ability to raise a very critical part of tax handle, which is personal income tax. So personal income tax is quite low. Corporate taxes are also quite low because major parts of the corporate sector is informal, and therefore we haven't found innovative ways of taxing them. So then there are few companies, large companies, that seems to be overburdened. And also the economy has not been growing. Over the last couple of years, we have not grown consistently beyond 5% of GDP for, say, more than 3-4 years. Many times at the moment now, over the last 3 years, our growth is averaging around 2-3%. It's forecast this year to grow less than 2%. So the more the economy is growing, then if it is formalized properly, you can get more tax revenue. Because we're also not growing, you have a lot of huge unemployment, particularly young people who have finished school. They don't get a job for 7 years. So you can't raise tax revenue from them. Okay, so it's the structure of the economy and it's the way to think outside the box to see how do we bring in all the various sectors of the economy to contribute. Property, for example, huge properties, very expensive, high-end properties, all over in the urban centers, Accra, Tema, Kumasi, Takoradi, they are not contributing adequately to the tax revenue.
So if I get you clearly, part of the problem we're faced with is the fact that our economy isn't growing at the rate that it should for us to be paying more taxes.
Yeah, that's a key part. And for the economy to grow means that there has to be adequate investment. Okay. The investment has to come in, for example, investing in the competitiveness of the economy to make sure that businesses are making good profit. Because the business make profit, they pay tax. And you have to make sure that all businesses are formalized, or a major part of the business are formalized. You have to invest in the economy in such that there's good infrastructure that makes people to be able to do business and earn good income. You have to formalize the sector in such a way that people finish school and they're able to get a job, then they can pay their income taxes. So when that investment is lacking, and agriculture investment is also lacking, so even farmers are not making good profits, and they are not even formalized. So then your ability to tax them is low, because one of the determinants of tax revenue is the GDP level, or per capita income. Our per capita income in Ghana is about $2,300, $2,400 per annum. So which means that if you divide the whole GDP by the 30 million people in Ghana, everybody's annual income is just about $2,500. So even if you tax it at 20%, your tax revenue is limited by the per capita income. If the per capita income increased to say $5,000, or like Korea, about $33,000 per capita, every Korean earns about $33,000 per year. That's the total GDP of Korea divided by the total population. Then even a tax of 10% on everybody raises quite a lot of revenue. So if economy does not grow, it limits the capacity to raise revenue. That's one of the critical things.
We'll come to this shortly, but let me get to Mr. George Kwetia, who is president of the Chartered Institute of Taxation, Ghana. What do you also think accounts for the low tax to GDP ratio?
Let me probably start by giving some context to this. In 2010, tax to GDP was about 10.8%. Then 10 years down the line in 2020, we got to this 13.4% that we are looking at. But incidentally, it dropped to 12.3% in 2022. If you look at the media review budget, the revenue forecast of about 108 million for tax revenues. Obviously, knowing that our GDP hasn't drastically changed, if not increased, then we are expecting even a much lower tax to GDP growth in 2023. So essentially, we are seeing a trend that after the 2020, we are having a kind of declining GDP to tax, tax to GDP ratio, which is the issue that I guess we should be worried about. Prof has alluded to a couple of reasons why we have a low GDP to tax to GDP ratio, and what I want to say here is that from our perspective, from the tax perspective, yes, we do have issues relating to the economy, which he has shared. It's agrarian and subsistence in nature. And we all know that our tax laws essentially exempts agriculture, and for that matter, farming, from taxes. So if you have a greater percentage of the population in a sector, a very significant sector that is not paying taxes or is exempt from tax, obviously then it means that you're going to have a much smaller percentage of the population paying taxes. We also have issues of, as you mentioned, with the foreign direct investments, where we have big companies in the extractive industry actually commanding most of the tax contribution. We have instances where these companies may be engaged in profit shifting, which relates to transfer pricing, whereby little is left in this environment to attract tax. We also have people evading taxes and avoiding taxes. We have a very high informal labor force. Statistics point to the fact that in 2020, for instance, the income tax from formal employment as a percentage to self-employed was 17-1, and it is even projected that this is going to move from 18-1, which means that from the formal sector, which is a much smaller sector of our economy, individuals contribute 17, let me say, even if it is cedis, as compared to self-employed person contributing 1 cedi. So that is also an issue, because you have the self-employed group being the greater percentage of the population. And if they are contributing 1 as against 17 from the smaller employed group, then obviously you're going to have a low tax to GDP ratio. We also have, like Prof said, we have also a very limited tax base in terms of high unemployment. We have casual labor, temporary employees, or temporary jobs. When you have an economy which is going through situations like this, then it means those who will contribute to your tax revenues are essentially a very small percentage of people. We also have the challenge, I know you would get to this, when we have tax incentives and exemptions, companies in the extractive industry have stability clauses in their agreements, various model agreements that we sign as a country. We do not design those model agreements, and they are designed by the developed countries, and it is just passed on to us. And obviously, if you are not able to design your own form of agreement, you being told that there is a so-called best practice, and that is what is done globally, and therefore you are also pinned down to accepting those conditions. Let me give you a typical example. Before the advent of maybe formal tax system, royalties, we all know, when our great-grandfathers lease out their land for farming, we had a system of a bunu and a visa, and therefore royalty rate was hovering around 30 to 50%. Now we have improved, we have grown, we have been knowledgeable, we have been educated, and then we take royalties at 10%. We've clearly shifted away from our own traditional way of, or let me say, our own homegrown base of royalty computations to something that has been handed over by, let me say, by foreigners, and we take it, we swallow it hook, line, and sinker. We also have issues relating to the lethargic tax administration system we have. We have a situation where for a very long time, we do not have a lot of specialisms and specialists in the tax administration. I've been in an environment where I've been part of a tax audit team, and this was a hospital. And in that tax audit team was a doctor. So obviously, if you are going to do an audit in the petroleum downstream sector, and you have no clue as to what the engineers do and how they compute things, you would obviously not be able to extract the level of taxes that you should, just because you do not have the expertise of that particular industry. So we also have, interestingly, our laws are so couched and structured that focuses on companies as against individuals. We all know that individuals and sole proprietorship or enterprises constitute the significant percentage of the business community. Yet when we are passing our tax laws, we tend to focus on companies as against enterprises and individuals. A typical example is our growth and stability levy. Clearly under the law, entities are defined to exclude individuals, and individuals do not necessarily mean the individual person, but it's individuals' business, and enterprises or sole proprietorships entities which are not registered as companies are individual entities. Withholding tax, for instance, individuals are precluded from withholding tax. So even if you are dealing with somebody as an individual and you're paying, and the law precludes you from withholding, and even though if you had had that mandate to withhold, it would have contributed to the tax net. Our laws do not give that opportunity. We also have instances of frequent tax policy changes. We don't even have a national tax policy, an effective national tax policy as yet.
Okay.
And with frequent changes, you also have uncertainty in the environment, and it reduces the level of compliance because it always takes some time for people to appreciate, understand, and then be able to do the right tax computations whenever you change tax laws. We can learn from the experiences we've had as a country, especially with respect to when we're introducing VAT and e-levy. There's very little
Mr. Kwetia,
consultation.
Yes, just before you continue, I mean, you've talked about all the problems that we're going through. So based on all of these challenges...
So all these things contribute to our low tax base.
So with all these, factors that you've enumerated, and based on the multiple, levies and taxes that we have, is it your view that currently we have enough taxes in place, or we have enough tax measures, as in multiple levies and taxes in place, to raise the requisite tax revenue?
Sure. Let me just share an issue with you. We had a World Bank conducting a study in 2020 with respect to Ghana's tax gap. And the bottom line of that study was the fact that Ghana, with respect to three taxes, which is import duties, corporate tax, and VAT, we had a tax gap of about 20%. If you take 2021 GDP estimate of about $77.6 billion, if you work out the 20% on the 77.6 billion and you translate it to its CD equivalent, depending on the exchange rate you use, we are talking about 155 to 170 billion as tax gap. If you look at our total tax revenue, as I've mentioned, for the revised one for 2023, government is only looking at 108 billion, whilst you have a tax gap of about 55 to 70 billion. So obviously, if you really are a country that wants to invest and make sure that you roll in the right taxes, in my view, it's not about more taxes, but it's rather an investment into making sure that you close the tax gap. And if we are able to do so, for instance, we should be able to double our tax revenues from the neighborhoods of 108 billion to almost 250 and even more billion cedis.
Let's take that point again. You say we don't need more taxes. What must we do?
That's why I say we look at the tax gap and then try to close it. So more investment should go into closing the tax gap. But if you want to look at other areas that we can also improve, I think we need to have a very simplified tax system that makes things easier for especially the informal sector to appreciate and comply. There should be some level of increased tax transparency, and people should know how much their taxes contribute to the development of the country. We know we run a centralized system of government, and more often than not, you get all these excuses, if I should call it quote unquote, that yes, we take your taxes from Accra, but we built a hospital in Bolgatanga or Tamale or in, let me say, the DNA. And people don't tend to appreciate that because the person is living in Accra, paying taxes, and then it's used to develop the country as a whole, which is good. But incidentally, there isn't much education and there isn't much to talk about with respect to the investments that the tax monies are used for. And if it is so, then you will realize that people have a very cold attitude towards tax payment because they do not see, especially in their immediate environment, what the taxes are used for. So I would say government should also look at, in trying to improve tax compliance, government should also look at ceding some amounts to the district and regional assemblies for them to undertake infrastructural projects within the communities that the tax is extracted from. And that obviously would engender a good level of compliance, and will be able to increase our tax revenues and, for that matter, our tax to GDP. We've been always talking about broadening the tax net. We are saddled with a host of exemptions. Maybe the way to broaden it is to curb these exemptions or possibly eliminate it. I know we have had an exemption tax act passed, which is good, but we can do more by way of reducing the level of exemptions that we grant. There's been a study by ONTAC which proves that actually exemptions do not even yield any investments at all. FDIs do not necessarily be attracted by tax exemptions. If a mining company has the geological database of gold in a given area, that is what they are interested in. And they will not be interested in, that will not change their investment decision, even if you grant or do not grant them exemptions. And we can also look at reducing evasion and equipping our people to be able to appreciate the nuances of profit shifting and transfer pricing, avoidance schemes. Maybe we also need to look at our penalties. Our penalty in the law, in my view, is not punitive enough to deter people from not complying. So there are a host of other things we can talk about. I don't want to be leading the point of course, one too can say maybe there are some areas talking about new taxes. Maybe there are some areas that we need to look at. We know that businesses are getting more digital, and as a country, we need to look at digital services tax and quickly come up with our own position by way of how to tax digital services. Because
exactly. That's one thing the Ghana Revenue Authority has been talking about, they say they're doing. But let me bring in, Professor Akar this. He's talked about all the challenges. But I'd want to start off something with you. You've talked about the fact that if we're to grow the economy, first of all, if we grow the economy, we increase our GDP, automatically, once there's more activity, we'll have more taxes. So let's look at, what we have been talking about. We've been playing, currently our GDP projected to end the year at 800 billion cedis. So that's about $70 billion, if I could put it that way. So at this rate, what rate of growth must we have to be able to achieve the 20% that we talk about, all things being equal, with the current tax regime?
Well, so it's expected that the country grows, is about the consistency of the growth and also the level of growth. In our history, for about 2 decades, we've been growing around an average of about 5%. That's the best we have achieved. There are times where, when we found oil in 2011, we had about 11 to 12% growth, and then it came down again. For many, many periods, we grow around less than 3%, 4%, 5%. My estimation shows that if we do the right kind of investment, we should be targeting about 7% GDP growth for a decade. When we are able to, and I don't think that's possible under an IMF program, because the IMF program actually brings in austerity.
But the IMF program seeks to increase tax to GDP to 18%.
Yeah, that's the target.
Yeah, within the medium term. Are you saying that is not feasible?
No, it's not feasible because the only way to do that is to impose new and additional taxes, and that brings us back to the question we have. The IMF is asking that VAT must be increased. So VAT is increased from 12.5% to 15%,
yeah.
which is actually counterproductive in a high inflation environment. We introduce more excise taxes on companies and businesses, which is counterproductive in a high inflation environment. Okay, so you can increase your tax to GDP ratio by imposing high taxes and more taxes, but that again is counterproductive because it stifles.
How is it counterproductive? Help me understand.
Yeah, because taxes affect incentives. So if you take, for example, income tax. So income tax affects labor supply. Okay, if I'm going to work and I know that 50% of my income is going to go into tax, it already, as an economic rational being, you decide, well, is it worth it? Should I go and work and pay half of my income to tax, and I don't know what they're going to use the tax for? So all things being equal, the lower tax rate creates an incentive for people to supply labor. In the same way as a business, corporate tax. No business wants to work and pay 50-60% of their profit into tax. So we need low tax rate and a higher or bigger tax base. That's what other countries are doing. What we are doing is raising more additional tax. When you buy a commodity now, apart from the VAT that's 15%, you have about another 6% additional taxes. Get fund, COVID, all of that. That 6% is applied before VAT is applied on that. It's not that's not what's supposed to be done in other countries. So if you want to have a VAT, you have a VAT 15%, 16%. That's all. You don't impose so much taxes on petroleum products, so much taxes at the customs. All of those things incentivize people to evade or to avoid or to go into bribery and all those kind of things. So the best way to grow your tax revenue is actually to formalize, to make sure that you broaden the tax base, which means that if everybody is contributing towards the tax revenue, you can reduce the tax rate. And as you said, you need to simplify the tax system, which means that you don't need 5, 6, 7 different taxes on a product or on commodities or on a company. If it's 1 or 2, that's it. It's very simple enough for people to grow. Then let the economy grow. As the economy is growing, the economy can only grow by investment, by savings, by profit, by people getting employment and getting good income. At the moment, that's not the case. So you see that, and he mentioned about the informal sector. The informal sector, for me, is quite huge because it contributes almost 67 to 70% of self-employment, of employment in Ghana. So if we don't find innovative way of bringing in the self-employed sector into the tax net, we will continue to have high corporate taxes and high income taxes and high VAT, because then we are just looking at the small formal sector.
But Professor Aka, as we talk about all these challenges, the reality also is that the Ghana Revenue Authority has been exceeding its targets. So, in 2022, they, achieved a target. Their target was 71.95 billion. And they raised some 75.71 billion. That's exceeding their target. So the question is, if we're exceeding our targets, isn't that an indication that we're doing well? Why the need to impose more taxes?
Well, so the question is, who set the target?
The government.
The
executive said the target for the Ghana Revenue Authority. There are those who think maybe we're not setting an ambitious target.
Yes, that's the issue. So
you think our targets are not ambitious enough?
Somebody setting his questions and marking himself. That's basically. So the Minister of Finance gets estimate from the Ghana Revenue Authority, and the Ghana Revenue said that this is how much we want to achieve, and that you need to ask. So look at the budget 2023 and see how much they want to raise from property taxes. Okay, less than 200 million Ghana cedi. See how much they want to raise from self-employment. So that's already quite too low. And of course, that will be achieved. What we need to do now probably is for Parliament to begin to set the target for the Ghana Revenue Authority and to have people to be employed who will achieve the target. If they don't achieve that target, maybe they face some consequences, some penalties. If you don't do that, we employ people. And the same thing happens at the assembly. We have MMDAs, district chief executives. They're supposed to raise revenue from property taxes, from rates.
They're looking at raising some 165 million
from
property taxes.
Yeah, but if you do an analysis, and I did some analysis, if you do property taxes, for example, my own analysis I did, 167 million.
Yes.
Okay. Just according to the Ghana.
165 million. Actually.
Million.
Yes.
Okay. So look at that. According to the Ghana population census, there are about 8.5 million plus completed residential structures in Ghana. 1.7 million of those structures are in Greater Accra. So Accra alone has about 1.7 million structures. Now, if you do the analysis, what the government is saying is that even if you decide that all this 167 million is going to be raised from Accra alone, forget about Kumasi, Takrady, and the rest of the economy, divide the 167 million by the structures in Accra, you get each property is going to pay just about 97 Ghana cedi a year. So which means that this is quite low. Just Accra alone, if you decided to raise just about 0.25% on the properties in Accra, you will be raising about 11 billion Ghana cedi by my analysis. Just even focus on East Legon Airport residential, wetlands, and here. And look at all the real estate. When I was coming, people were advertising real estate. They are quoting them in dollars. Okay, so you can buy a property in East Legon for $200,000, 1 million Ghana cedis. And if people are not asked to pay property rate, then you set a target of 167 million. When you are supposed to raise, you could raise as much as 12 billion from property tax alone, from Accra alone, by my analysis. So property tax actually holds a huge potential if we were just even picking Accra, Kumasi, Takrady to start with. If we cannot even roll out the whole country and say, okay, let's focus on Greater Accra, Kumasi, Metropolis, and Western Region, Accra, Secondary Takrady. And let's value the properties that are in Greater Accra. If you even do it for just Accra, East Legon, Airport Residential, Osu alone, the properties there, and value them and say that we are going to impose a tax of 0.5% or 0.1% or 0.05% on the values, you will not be talking about 167 million Ghana cedi in a year. So that's actually low. The same thing, look at self-employed, how much they are trying to raise from self-employed. And you see that again, the self-employed...
self-employed is 856 million.
856 million. Yeah. There are 9.9 million self-employed people in Ghana. 9.9 million self-employed. Okay. Out of that 9.9 million, 6.6 million of them are formalized, i.e. they have employees. So when somebody has a self-employed, whether it's a hairdresser or is a barber or is a mechanic that has apprentices and has 2 or 3 employees, that's not an informal sector job. That's a business that is within the community. It's in Adenta, it's in Osu, it's in a structure, it's not even a hawker. This is not something, it doesn't take rocket science for this self-employed business to be registered and for them to pay the appropriate tax. I did a small calculation by a barber, the barber I go to where I barber my hair.
Yes.
Yeah, and this barber has been there for more than 15 years since I've been living in Adenta. More than 15 years. When I go there, haircut is 20 Ghana cedi. I ask him, how many people do you barber a day? He said, at least 10 people. On Saturdays and Sundays, he gets as much as 30 people come into barber.
Okay.
By my calculation, every month, he gets about 9,000 Ghana cedi. That's more than a teacher's salary. That's more than a nurse. That's actually almost equal to what a professor takes. And so when you are taxing the university security officer, who earns about just 800 Ghana cedi, the nurse or the cleaner in Kolebu, who earns just about 700 Ghana cedi, and you impose income tax on him. And then you have people doing business like barber, hairdressers, mechanics, who are not in the bush. They are right in the community. They've been there for 10 years, 20 years. And you cannot rate, they are earning as much as 9,000 a month, 20,000 a month. Some of them count a lot, about 1 million Ghana cedi in a week. And you don't find a way of taxing them even 5% of their revenue every month. You will not raise your tax revenue. Then you will now go and concentrate on the free formal sector, people like me, small businesses, and impose high taxes on them, increase VAT to 15%, impose a lot of excise duties that is now crippling businesses. You will not grow the economy. People will find a way of avoiding and evading the tax. and you come back the same way, not achieving your target. So I've just wanted to show that even if you look at the budget, the targets are not ambitious enough. Our tax effort is too low, is inadequate. That's what the World Bank analysis he was mentioning shows, that if you take even corporate tax, the tax gap is about 84%, which we are raising only just about 16% of the potential. We could have raised more revenue from the corporate sector than we are doing. If you come to VAT, it's the same thing. If you come to import duty, which there's a lot of evasion at the customs, we could have raised about 30% more revenue from import duty than we are raising. So we need to look at the tax administration and reform it and set them ambitious target and let them raise the revenue. Otherwise, we'll keep going to IMF, because when you don't raise enough revenue, you need to borrow. And if you don't borrow from your central bank, you need to go and borrow from the international capital market.
So let me get the point clearly. It's your view that if we do, for instance, if we were to formalize, and even let's put that aside, if we were to collect taxes from the self-employed who are already formalized, we'll be good to go.
We'll be good to go, because you have almost 10 million self-employed. And let's say some of these self-employed people, you may not be able to really raise taxes. But there are about 6 million of them that they may not be registered as companies, but they are formal in the sense that they have a location, we know the people. Now we have Ghana card, most of them have Ghana card, they have a phone number, they have employees, they have apprentices. So these people can be formalized. And we have to charge the MMDAs to do that, because they are located in the Accra Metro, they are located in Adenta, they are located in Medina. So instead of asking the MMDAs to depend on the common fund as their main source of revenue, and then we don't set them any target, they are not competing. We need to take the China model. In China, for example, they made the communes, or what we call the districts and assemblies, to be competing every year. So appointment to be a DCE is based on your tax performance. So we know that, and what we need to ask the Ghana Tax Service to try to do for us is to, instead of giving us a GDP for Ghana, is to begin to give us GDP per region and GDP per MMDA. So we need to know what is Adenta's potential GDP. What is its GDP to contribute? So let's suppose if Adenta, the GDP in a year in Adenta for 2023 is say, let's say 10 billion, then we can say, okay, there's a lot of business activity, properties, commerce going on in Adenta. There are a lot of high income earners in Adenta. Your GDP as a contribution to Ghana's GDP is about 10 billion. You must raise about 20% of that GDP in tax revenue for you to continue to be a DCE. And that is a competition for all the districts. And when you bring that competition, because now Adenta will be competing with Medina, they'll be competing with Ayawaso. And they know that if I don't reach my target, I will face a penalty or I'll be fired. Another person will be appointed to take the place. That kind of competition already enhances revenue mobilization.
The thing about decentralization, you're right, is that it's supposed to lead to some competition between the districts. And so in the delivery of public service and public good, if your district is doing very well, the other district will be forced to also do well. Unfortunately, in our part of the world, also because these persons are appointed and there is no form of assessment, nobody's going to come back and say, you did not perform, go for the next person. And, all we do is just to wait for government to appoint them. That's actually the problem. But let me bring in George Kwetia in at this point. He's been crunching the figures. He is the president of the Chartered Institute of Taxation. Look, in other jurisdictions, taxes that will be implemented 3, 4, 5 years from now, discussions are already being had. In our part of the world, it looks like every time we look for money, and then we quickly gather and say, which area can we tax? The question is, what is Ghana's tax policy? Do we even have one? And how is that helping us in achieving our tax or revenue targets?
Thank you again. I guess I had alluded to this issue or this challenge as to whether we do even have an effective national tax policy. If you talk to the policy unit of the Ministry of Finance, they would assure you that yes, there's one in the pipeline, It is awaiting the minister's approval before it will be made public. That is the feedback I get because I specifically asked this question. But yes, you're right. If we had a tax policy, a national tax policy, we would all be guided by that policy. Like you're rightly saying, that if even within that policy we spell out timelines for which tax laws or policies will come into force, then we all know. But incidentally, here we are, things are shrouded in some kind of environment that it's not very transparent, let me put it that way. Things that you would expect probably people to be bold to tell you that, no, we don't have one. You always get the excuse, the typical Ghanaian balance. It is being worked on. We are working on it. It is in the pipeline and all those kind of things. But I think it is high time we have a tax policy, and all stakeholders will be interested to ensuring that we all abide or go by the policy. Incidentally, taking into account the various manifesto of ruling governments and those kind of things, we tend to also get surprises because somebody will say, well, I promised ABC, and that is the only way I can achieve it. So probably it suits various governments for us not to have a document like that, which we can pin them down to. But I totally subscribe to the fact that we need to have a national tax policy. And we have to, if we don't have it, as I see it to be, we have to quickly put one together and approve it and get all stakeholders to contribute to that policy document.
But you've also talked about the stability clauses and agreements in some of the agreements within the extractive sector. Now, this is a major issue. Going forward, how do we deal with these?
Well, I think going forward is good you are asking going forward because those agreements have already been crystallized. Yes. And we do not have the capacity to apply taxes retrospectively. So it is increasingly a big challenge. Even if you introduce new taxes, it's a big challenge if you can succeed getting any contributions from these companies that have their stability clauses enshrined in the agreement that they've signed with government, because those agreements obviously take precedence over our local laws. We always see in the various enactments that we introduce as new taxes that where there's a contradiction between this act and any other act, blah, 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 this particular act takes precedence. But it doesn't work that way because you already have a legally binding agreement with an entity where they've already put in all these stability clauses. So yes, it is a big challenge to us in trying to improve our revenue drive because these companies have been around and they will still be around with us, but then they obviously will stick to their guns based on whatever stability clauses they have and push for their rights. If you don't want to incur financial losses and those things by being sent to an external arbitration or whatever, or court, then you just have to back down. We have had instances where recently an oil company wanted to push, a power producing company wanted to push to take Ghana to court, an outside court. And obviously, you know that you, as a country, it is also not good enough an image for the country when you have investors complaining that you turn your back on contracts that you have committed yourself into signing. So stability clauses are a very big challenge to us, and it is going to be increasingly difficult as I see it to deal with the past. But going forward, I guess some of the things we need to do is to have sunset clauses in these agreements, such that if we sign any agreement with a stability clause, there should be an end point or a given time to say that this agreement has to be revisited, or this agreement ends on this date and we have to renegotiate. If we don't do that, then we're going to have these stability clauses running ad infinitum, which is not good for us. We also need to get our people to really understand and appreciate when we are signing these agreements, because my experience in our environment is when you're dealing with the foreign direct investors, they come in with the top-notch experts to really discuss and negotiate these agreements. We rather probably do not even have the expertise in this area. And our politicians or our political leaders go and get these documents signed without really appreciating the nuances of what they have signed. I'm not saying that they are naive, but I think if you're dealing with an expert, a seasoned, well-trained guy in a particular industry field, negotiating with you, and you have just a very little knowledge about that industry, I guess you already have set yourself up to fail.
All right.
We need to build that capacity and use that capacity we build in getting these agreements underway going forward.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. George Kwitia, who is president of the Chartered Institute of Taxation Ghana. And a big thank you to you also, Professor Charles Acker, for making time to join us. That's all from us. My name is Winston Amon. Coming up as News Desk. Have a lovely day.